Call this meeting to order. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2010.
Thank you. Roll call. Councilor Cody.
Here.
Councilor Krass.
Here.
Councilor LaRochelle.
Here?
Councilor Lunt.
Here.
Councilor Mason.
Here.
Councilor Pomelo is excused. And Councilor Bowie is here. Okay. First item, please, Twyla.
We have no public hearings. First item is under the consent agenda, Order 2010-176, minutes of September 17th, 2010.
Would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Councilor Mason.
I'll second that.
I have a second from Councilor LaRochelle. All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Okay.
Say something before you start. The previous meeting, I have heard comment after comment after comment that you could not be heard. Will you please speak up and speak into your microphones? Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Dot, I watched it on TV too, and the problem, I think there was a problem with the audio where it wasn't picking up anyone at all. Even if you're talking right into your microphone, it wasn't picking it up.
Time after time after time.
Okay, next item, please.
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, Order 2010-177, Miller Land Donation.
City engineer will address that.
As many of you may know, may or may not know, tomorrow night, the town, the DOT is holding a public hearing here at the town office for consideration of 2 rail crossings that were petitioned for as part of the Androscoggin River Trail, which is the trail project that was voted on, approved over the last year or so. One of the goals of the trail was to cross the land, cross the railroad tracks roughly in that area, basically behind the Knights of Columbus area, to access the parcel of land that's opposite Capitol Avenue on the riverside. That land's owned by Miller Industries. They've agreed to donate that land to the town as part of the project, and I'm here to basically see if the council will accept that donation. Pretty crucial to our plans, and we originally hoped to just get an easement, but sounds like Mr. Miller is interested in just donating the property to us, so.
Was there anything built on that property?
Question?
Sorry?
Was there anything built on the property as it is now?
No, it's just a strip of land, basically from the Koodles, and I want to say it's up to basically the River Road.
So they're not going to pick up any unexpected liabilities with it?
I don't believe so.
I don't
They
believe so.
haven't declared that there's any, that's a hazardous waste site as it is.
That would be a major concern, that we don't pick up a
Yep.
liability that we're unaware of.
This area that you're looking at has been part of the engineering of what this trail is all about, right? So, I mean, it isn't an unknown area. It's been actually looked at and mapped out and surveyed. I mean, it's a pretty well-known piece.
Yep, it was surveyed, they did all the wetlands delineation and whatnot. I will say we haven't done any test pits to make sure there isn't anything, but it's a strip of land essentially just along the railroad tracks, between the railroad tracks and the water. I don't know what happened here 100 years ago, but we're going under the impression that there's nothing out there. I mean, that's a good question. I hadn't really considered up to this point, considering majority of the other parcels have been issues. We didn't have any, although we didn't have any issues with the property that was donated to us for the paper mill trail section either. I can follow up with Mr. Netto just to confirm that. It's not an issue.
Any other questions from council?
Just that years ago, there was all kinds of things that rails were used for, and is there something unforeseen that we'll be responsible for? It brings to light that with everything that's going on today, we don't need any new liability.
Yep.
Is this something we vote on, Mike, or?
Yes, we do have to vote on accepting this gift from Miller Industries. And upon doing that, then the town engineer and town manager can go to at the MDOT meeting and get approval for crossing the railroad tracks in those two areas, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if they don't, I mean, then the big question will be is if for whatever reason DOT does not give us the crossings that we're looking for, at what point do we even still want the property, I guess is gonna be the main question. But we didn't wanna go into I mean, we've had our discussions with Miller. It's always been verbal. There hadn't been anything in writing, and they put in writing that they were willing to donate the property to us. So that way, when we went to the hearings, if there were any questions about, you know, are you asking for railroad crossing to a piece of land that you aren't even gonna be able to use? We wanted to make sure that that wasn't an issue. We've got enough issues trying to get the crossings as it is, so we're just trying to get this part of it taken care of.
And I do believe, I mean, if we were not to use this piece of property, I imagine the Androscoggin River Trust that actually looks at the other piece of property, I believe that group would be really, I mean, any properties like this is very hard to come by, I would imagine. So
Yep.
if we don't use them, I'm sure there's groups that would preserve it quite well, I would imagine.
Good point.
Question in the back of the room.
I'll get the audience participants.
Can we accept this, can we vote to accept this gift as long as we check it prior to for contaminations?
Yeah.
You know, so that we don't get burnt.
Yeah. So I guess I would entertain a motion to accept the land donated by Miller's Industries with the understanding that it will be reviewed for possible contamination.
Exactly.
So moved.
And I'll make that motion, Mike.
I have a motion from Councilor Cody.
I'll second that.
I have a second from Councilor LaRochelle. This will be a quick claim deed, right? The process that we go through. Any other comments from council?
The only thing I need to ask is, looking at the map, Miller owns a lot of properties along our trail system, and what we're working with is there any other properties that you're looking at that may be interested for us that Miller, at this point in time, if he's willing to look at us for donating land to the town that could be used for our trail system or any other recreational spots?
Yeah, we've, through the course of this, I've had, I mean, yeah, start over. For a while, it was hard to determine who the right person was to talk to at Miller Industries. There's been a couple of different people, but Larry Netto is the gentleman that's kind of taking care of, is Miller's agent, and he's identified several other parcels that the Trails Commission is interested in that are adjacent primarily to the paper mill trail. They were formerly contaminated locations that are supposedly cleaned up to DEP satisfaction. So there's some other parcels that we're looking at that would add to some possibilities in the future. But this one, we're focusing on just this one right now because it was a simple stretch and it was critical to construction of the project that we have funded right now. The Trails Commission and I and whoever else needs to be involved will work with Miller to see what else they're willing to donate, I guess.
We have made a request several months ago when the whole Rumble Mill project was being looked at. There's a parcel behind the Rumble Mill, quite a distance off from the parking lot. I guess it used to be an old ball field at one time. We have asked Miller if they would consider donating that as well. And they want to wait until they have a serious buyer before they make that commitment.
Don't want to pass up any opportunities, that's all.
No.
Any other comments from council? Comments from the public? Yes, sir?
I'm Larry Fillmore, I live in Lisbon. I called the Public Works Department about the railroad tracks that are in Lisbon on the ferry road, where the ferry road begins, and the road that goes down towards Beaver Park. It's raised there, the tracks are raised up. I said, why can't we get those tracks taken out because they're a nuisance and get it tarred over? The gentleman at the Public Works told me that those tracks are going to be reused, and we cannot, as the town, touch those tracks. So if they're going to reopen those tracks, that would have a bearing on you closing or using that land on the tracks. I don't know. You have to ask Public Works.
like me to address that?
Would you have a comment on that, Ryan?
That is essentially the reason for the hearing tomorrow night. There has been several discussions about whether or not, depends on who you talk to and the day of the week, I guess. The railroad's coming back tomorrow, it's coming back never, 20 years, who knows? I mean, the railroad owns the strip of land where the railroad is, and it's the railroad's responsibility. I mean, we're not allowed to cross the railroad tracks without this formal public hearing, approval from Commissioner Cole, and a whole litany of just legal aspects, because otherwise it's considered trespassing. Every time someone's on there, it's technically considered trespassing. So we are doing this in conjunction with the railroad. If we get the crossings, which we're hopeful for, they'll be designed to encourage safe crossing, no different than any roadway, that if the train ever does become active, that we'll be able to provide a safe means for pedestrians to access this piece of property.
Ryan, is it the same owners of the railroad in both those parts?
No, it's, well, let me start over. Basically, the ownership of the railroad changes from Maine DOT essentially to Pan Am at somewhere around the Big Dipper, Knights of Columbus, Mr. Stevens storage area, that strip. And so we're dealing primarily with DOT. We made our plans for the trail based around the area that Pan Am owns, so that way we would avoid their right-of-way based on their unwillingness to work with people that have tried to do the same thing in other parts of the state. So we're basically working in the DOT-owned portion of the railroad with DOT funding, and hopefully the department can see things uniformly instead of two different views after tomorrow. But again, that'll be determined sometime after tomorrow night.
May I add to that too?
Yeah.
If you get a chance to, and many people already have, if you go up to the Augusta system by the waterfront, there is some very active railroad crossings on their path, and two people can live together without causing too much grief. I think
Yep.
it's been done and throughout the state, so hopefully they can make it happen here.
Yep.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Encourage people to come out tomorrow night. No, they won't
Is
see
that
this on
here,
TV.
Ryan?
It's right here at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock here?
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item, please, Twyla.
Order 2010-178, request for permanent easement to Lot R8, map R7 for Charles Saletti.
You have in your packets a letter that was addressed to me. It was a request by Mr. Saletti to get access to a back property. It is through our landfill area. It's been capped and closed. I've asked our solid waste director, Wayne Ricker, to talk to you about this and his thoughts.
This is a letter that you all have, and Mr. Aldridge turned it over to me to hear. Apparently, Charlie Saletti, who I've known my life, has a property over and back there that is landlocked, and he's asking us for a permanent right-of-way through the landfill. He, according to his letter, he cut it off years ago, or someone in the family had cut it off years ago, come off the Miller Road at that time. Now he's asking for us a permanent one. He had a temporary one coming in, now asking for a permanent one. The permanent wording scares me a little bit. I'll put my 2 cents worth in and tell you the way I personally feel about it. Maybe I shouldn't, but I will. So that's all I can tell you. It's over and back there, but I'll have to give you the same answer that I've given you every time we've had a request to use our land, is we still have not had it surveyed or checked out. We do not know the exact pinpoints. I've gone in there and walked. I don't know where I'm walking because I don't know the land. One of these days, we've got to come up with some money and have someone go in, and I'm pretty sure the pins are all in there because the other boundary owners around there, butters, have had it surveyed in the last 5 years. So the pins are in there, but we just got to have someone check it out someday before we can give anybody an accurate answer of what we want to do in there. But the wooden permanent going across there, and I've got pictures. I've shown you when the other people have come in to request. It's a wetland down in back there, and I just can't see it personally of doing something like this.
Do we know what he plans on doing with the property?
Have no idea. The letter reads that, if I correct it right, he wants to possibly cut it off again, but I have no idea.
And he currently has temporary access?
No, he has no
He has no
access.
access now.
The way, all I know is this, and looking on the map and seeing around and talking to a couple of the neighbors, because Mr. Saletti, Charlie Saletti, I've known, lives down in Ellsworth, Owl's Head now. I haven't seen him for a few years.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
You're saying the back of the portion's fairly damp and wet.
You go right off from the landfill, you go right down into a swamp. I can show you pictures if you
No,
want to see them.
I take
We
your word
did
for
that
it. You
for
know
the
better,
trail.
know it better than anybody, so.
I tried walking it and I couldn't walk through it.
And one of the things I did learn as far as having some other property is any time that you give an easement or you allow permission, any resulting damage for DEP or erosion or corrosion is actually your responsibility regardless who you give permission to. So, being a landfill and erosion and corrosion and wet, it just doesn't sound like it's a really good mix, but, I mean, that's why you're here, though. You know it better than anybody else.
It's my feeling of it.
This is the same parcel with the ball fields are out there too, right? Am I correct? That's,
It's going to be down in back of the ball fields.
that limit our future use?
Wait a minute, yes, way down in back of there.
What do you mean, would this road going in there limit future use if we wanted to put another ball field or put bleachers or something in there? Would it get in the way of that?
You can come up with all kinds of reasons.
I mean, it could, that's a good point, Mark, I
Like,
think it could.
You know, it's a
because-
big parcel of land. I don't want to, divide a line through it and now we can't build somewhere we want to in the future.
I question whether DEP would even allow us to think about it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question. So you don't know the answer to that, whether or not DEP would even allow it?
I'm not going to speak for him, but
Look at that.
You know?
Well, what did council like to do with this?
I think the first thing to even consider is what DEP will allow us to do. I mean, that would be the first question. I mean, the man has a right to get to his property, but certainly we don't want to be liable for anything. So I would say that finding what DEP has to say and what they will allow, where the pins are, all of what Fern mentioned, is it accessible without any problems?
I'll just remind you once more, the word permanent. Look at that, instead of asking for a right-of-way to go in and cut the woodlot off. That's two different things.
He has a right to get to his land, but not necessarily across our parcel either.
Correct.
Although he could ask any one of those other neighbors, I'll pay you some money for an easement.
Certainly. So I guess we need to weigh out all those options first. I mean, there really aren't any options other than what he's telling us there is for an option. So I guess I would say just find out what DEP allows and find out if there are other people he can buy property off to get access.
His property is just a short distance from the Miller Road.
Yes, it is.
So I'd give him, I think we should research and give him what the options are, and
Is the burden on us to do that, or is the burden on
maybe
the
it's,
landowner?
it's maybe on him, but the DEP part, maybe if we were able to find out what our liability would be, that would give us an
Still,
answer to the question.
Okay,
Mike?
yes, Rod.
One thing that you gotta be awful careful of when allowing somebody to cross your property, and we ran into that problem in another location in town. Man was landlocked, and he got a temporary access to his property to do whatever he had to do, and the man ended up in court to stop him from using it as a permanent access. And it was a responsibility of the landowner to fight that. And if we give a temporary access to get in there to cut wood or whatever, is this gonna turn around and come back and bite us and have to try to force the issue to not be a permanent access to this piece of land where it is landlocked? And the state of Maine does not like landlocked property anywhere. They frown on that very, very much. So before I would be giving any right-of-ways, I would be very careful, because once you start something, it's hard to stop it. And we might end up having to fight it.
Do you know what happened with the people at Lot 42, why that ended? I mean, that might
All I know
be
is the letter that you have in front of you.
Well, I guess there's a lot of unanswered questions that are, they're not here. So I think I'd like to find out exactly why the Lot 42 decided not to let him cross there anymore.
Mike, ma'am?
Yep.
I mean, at this point in time as a council, I mean, my opinion is we couldn't vote positively on this And I agree with Mike, it's really up to the burden of the person who owns the property to come forth with a plan of action, however that may be, to actually be the best of his ability for us to vote on. I mean, I don't really think that we need to, with limited resources we have in town right now, to have townspeople actually researching DEP's, opinion of back lots. But again, I think as a landowner, if he probably needs to come forth with us with the best plan and other options that he does have, and if he can plead his case and make it all look good, then I think we'd look at it differently. I just don't think we have much information right now to base any decision on.
Is the Miller Road a town property, or is that private now?
Private?
I don't know. I have any idea.
Buttons, do you know?
The town maintains it up to a point.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is an old county road. And I would say he'd have to go through that approach if it's an old county road.
I'll see if I can locate telephone number on Charlie Saletti and have a little talk with him. I can do that for you.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So in the meantime, we'll just
Table it.
move it to another agenda at some later date.
Would agree with
Is
that.
that okay with council?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Wayne. Next item, please.
Order 2010-179, warrant for November 2nd, 2010. Annual
Okay.
election. So this is our annual election warrant. And we've included all of the information about the polling hours and the absentees and the polling locations. Just requires your signature, and we can post that in the specimen ballot tomorrow.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion.
So move.
I have a motion from Councilor Crafts,
I'll second that.
second from Councilor LaRochelle. Any further discussion from council? Comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Okay. Next item, please.
Under other business, Public Works Department presentation.
This is the beginning. We do this every fall. The departments bring to you just their activities that have been going on throughout the winter or summer and early fall. So you're on, Buttons.
I was asked to give a presentation on what we accomplished this summer. We did a lot. Thank you very much. No, we kidding. We started off early, as you know, we had an early spring in April. We got start doing the sidewalks and streets, getting them swept up. Got the crosswalks and stuff painted. We completed the complete reconstruction of the King Road. That included all the culverts, ditching, landscaping, erosion control, and I'm looking for 12 to 15 years of service out of that without having to touch it now. We helped set up and take down the Moxie Festival, as we do every year. The Upland Road Walking Trail, we completed part of that as far as the basins and the drainage and the landscaping. We are currently trying to finish the last part of it that goes to Webster Road. It should be, the pavement should be, if I remember Ryan, next week we should be able to finish the paving on that. So that section will be complete. We changed the culvert that had a huge hole in it on Main Street. We fixed the lake that occurs out here after every storm when it's raining heavy. We fixed the drainage there. We're also fixing the drainage on that in the parking lot for the police department. I believe that is complete. We are currently hauling in our winter sand. We had to remove all the stuff out of the garage. By the way, it's all insulated, and we're starting to put the stuff back in there now. And the normal maintenance that takes place every summer, the mowing, mulching, the parks and the ball fields, the regular maintenance, the coal patching, everything else that goes on. We help with the library, their AC units, and anything that she needs down there. Diane's very nice. We try to help her as much as we can. The MTM, we installed a basketball hoop, moved the swing set, removed the slide, loamed and seed where the slide was, and the other day we picked up the tents and they're now in storage. And it's going.
Roger?
I got a call from a citizen from the King Road. There's a concern that when that road was completed, the mailboxes were put right on the edge of the pavement.
Yes, because the mail people go off the pavement and it ruins the edge.
Well,
They're
they were-
now right where the tire is. They've all been lifted to the right height. The wings shouldn't hit them, and if they are, we replace them anyway.
It was just a concern that the plow was gonna hit them where they were. And I
They're
said,
all set to our specs to the right height now.
okay. I just wanted to address it with you so that you're aware that of the
Yeah, I was aware
complaint.
of it. I've been getting the calls too. Just
I've got a
please
question
bear
for you.
with me and let's see what happens.
Okay,
Got a question for you, Buttons. On
Yes.
Upland Road, there's a big trench right there by, I think it's Mill Street. You seen that? I don't know whether it's you guys or the water department that.
That's
did
the
that.
water department's.
Okay, well, we need to get on the water department to get that paved very soon, because that is pretty bad. I've
Yes.
almost wrecked my car a couple times right in there. So
Yeah, and there's also an awful
there's
uplift,
a couple big
up,
holes in the side of the road there.
uplift in the ditch by the Botma farm also, yes,
You
I
guys
know.
need to get after them, or we need to get after them and, make it done before we get snow, 'cause it's gonna
Yes.
be bad on plows.
Buttons, you actually, if I may, you actually did some work with the school this summer too, right? I
Yes,
seen
we
some-
did. We did a lot of work for the school. But that's all on their dime on Fridays, so I don't include it in what I've got done. I included what they've got done for other departments.
Any other questions from council? Comments? Comments from the public? Okay, thank you, Buttons.
Thank you. I have issues at home. See you.
Yes, sir. Okay, next item, please, Twyla.
Recreation Department presentation.
Mark, you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
A little higher,
A little bit better?
a little better.
Always a tough act to follow, Buttons, but I'm just happy to be here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some highlights basically on the summer programs. I'm going to give you some highlights on the fall programs, kind of like the last quarter, last 3 months of what's been going on. And go over some revenue numbers as well, and answer any questions you might have. In the summertime, it's always our busiest season. We spend probably 80% of our budget in the summertime. We bring in about 90% of our revenues in the summertime. Some of the highlights that we've had this year, if we base the economy on how well our programs were going, it wouldn't match up at all. The 5K road race this year had almost 500 runners. Usually, we're thrilled with about 250 to 300 runners. With the construction on Route 9, I couldn't believe people were paying me $12 to run on a dirt road. But we actually collected about $6,200 that day, or for that race, and half of it came the race day registration. People look at the weather. The weather wasn't looking good. I mean, we got our race in, the parade got in, and if you remember right, the sky opened up for about 2 hours. But we had 40 volunteers and 6 businesses that sponsored our race or volunteered to help things move along. We were done before the parade. Things were perfect. Our Trekker Day Camp, I budget $5,000 in revenues every year for that. And what it is, it's a program that we do in the summertime for 8 weeks for 1st through 3rd grades. And we charge $250 per child with a discount for any other children in the family. And this year we exceeded revenues by almost $7,000 in that one program. We collected $12,000 in that one program alone. That equals the amount of revenue that we brought in 1993. Just that one program. Our playground camp collected over $13,000, $3,400 above what was budgeted. So between those two programs, about another $10,000 over budgeted, or over what we expected to bring in. I know Jessica's thinking right now, great, you're going to bring in like $70,000 in revenues this year. Well, sometimes that works out that way. And right now it's too early to say because there's some collections that haven't been done yet. But right now, I expect to bring in about $5,000 more than expected. So that's always good. In June, we did a Boston Harbor cruise with the senior citizens. We did a luncheon. We took 29 participants, walked them through Boston, took the T. If you can get 29 senior citizens on a train, on a boat, and back to Maine, and everybody back safely, it's successful. We had a great time. In fact, some of the things they want to do now is even more extraordinary. They want to go on a 3-day trip to New York City. Today they were in New Hampshire at Strawberry Bank. We have 2 trips a month, meals every other Friday. 55 people last Friday for ham dinner. I mean, it's been great. I didn't know anything about the town of Lisbon until I started having senior citizens come over and having meals, because the history of our town and the stories that they have to tell are the reason. The food is the excuse for them to be there. The stories are the reason that they're there. Concerts in the park. Everybody knows that lives in Lisbon that was a huge success this year. It wasn't run through the rec department, but Ross and Amy Cunningham with the promotions committee coordinated that and did an outstanding job. Ross is quite a ticket, and his wife Amy is a very generous volunteer, and they do a great job. We need more people like them in our town. Program highlights for the fall. We had a football jamboree this year. We hosted it. First time Lisbon hosted it because we're new to the league, what's Central Maine Football League. And we had 12 teams come to play football in a round-robin type program September 11th. The coordination of that was pretty intense, making sure that there was no soccer games or football games that week, and the officials there and coaches and all, make sure all these 12 teams knew where to be and what time to be there. We split the concessions with the high school boosters, and we raised $3,400 in 4 hours. I told them that we'd host a jamboree every year if they wanted us to. We're on the football field and the soccer fields. If you guys have been down there, the work that the school department, Steve Bard, Pat Malloy, and the school department have done down there is unbelievable. Before, it was just a tucked away field. You couldn't really see anything. Now it's all opened up, green grass, hardwood trees, and it's just a beautiful field. I get to brag about some of our leagues. Our 3rd and 4th grade football program is undefeated. This is only the 3rd year in the league, and they're 5-0. They're seeded number 1 in the playoffs. Our 5th and 6th graders are 4-1, and they're seeded number 2 in the playoffs. We have a new flag football. If you can imagine, 1st and 2nd graders playing football in an organized fashion. You'd be amazed. You watch these kids play. They're about 1.5 feet tall and holding a football that's half their size, but they get it. Lisbon's a football town, if you haven't noticed. I actually, I don't know, I probably shouldn't bring this up, but I have a very heavy heart. I just was notified today that Coach Woodhead passed away yesterday. And thinking about football in this town, you can't say football in this town without knowing or mentioning Coach Woodhead. And he was a great mentor to me. He was the first rec director in Lisbon from 1962 to 72. He made a big impact on many people in our town, including me. He was just in my office Thursday visiting, and he's going to be greatly missed. I'm really sad. But anyway. Our rec field hockey team is undefeated. We have 38 girls on the team. We don't make any cuts in the rec department. If we don't have enough uniforms, we get uniforms. And it's probably been a problem at times, but I feel strongly that we don't cut kids. The school department often has to cut kids because of just because of budgeting costs and things like that. But we charge for participants, and they pay to play, so we find them uniforms. That's a lot of people on a team, but our coaches are organized, and this field hockey team has not lost a game since 2008, which, it's not about winning. It's really about how you play the game. But in our culture, a lot of times you're judged based on your perceived success, and if that's true, then these girls coming up to high school level that high school field hockey coach is going to have one heck of a team next few years. The Youth Soccer League, we have 200 participants, which is about average. We have 13 teams, and 12 businesses from Lisbon sponsor our soccer teams. It's nice collaboration. They want to sponsor to get the name on the shirt, and it helps us to afford some of our programs and also our revenues. Our before and after school recreation program, these are just highlights. This isn't all the stuff we do. Our before and after school recreation program is pretty new. I mean, we've been doing it before school since the new school opened. We have sustainable numbers of 43 kids in the program this year. The program more than pays for itself in the revenues. It's 7 o'clock to 8:30 in the morning every day at LCS. There's no overhead for us. We charge a very minimal cost. It's good for the parents who go to work early. But that's what we do, and our after-school program is very similar. The school department transports kids to the MTM Center at 3:30. They stay there till 5:30 every day, from Monday through Friday. This year, we're doing a half day for workshop days. We're also doing a full day for vacation days. Parents don't have any daycare during the day, and if they're in school, they can come to the MTM Center during Christmas break, April and February vacations, and spend the whole day there. So that's going to be, I think that's going to be a very popular program. We have a brand new preschool play group that's been very popular Monday through Friday, 16 participants. And Marcy Crosskill has organized and it's been running. That program's going really well. Our Sunshine Hill Seniors Program, I talked a little bit about that. Our coordinators are Lynn Strout and Sylvia Dowdy. We did the Boston Harbor trip. We did the Botanical Gardens of Bar Harbor last month. We did the Freiburg Fair Seniors Day, brought 2 vans to Freiburg. We did Castles in the Clouds, and we're doing a 2-night trip in New Hampshire on November 16th. It's a shopping trip. Not 2 nights, 1 night. 3 nights in New York City in May. That's some organizing to do, coordination, but we have the right people doing the right things, and it's paying off. Our Friday luncheons, 50 to 60 attendees every Friday, every other Friday, and we have 7 to 10 volunteers. Cribbage is very popular. If you go by Monday mornings from 9 to 12, the place is packed with cars Monday morning, because even on a holiday, you'll see the cars there Monday morning from 9 to 12. Nobody misses it. We get new participants all the time, but they're over there playing cribbage, and they're very serious about their cribbage games. I'm going to talk a little bit about the MTM building now, facilities. We had all of our sprinkle heads replaced, which was one of those things that we kept getting written up on over the years. They were over 50 years old, and we needed to have a plan. We just bit the bullet and replaced all the sprinkler heads in the building. It took one day shut down, and we just got it done. Our fitness room door, which had such wide gaps in the door that when it snowed, there was snow inside the building, was replaced with a keyless entry. It's a lot more secure now, much more weatherproof. Our windows are being replaced. If you get a chance, drive by. You can see what's going on down there. We have Steve Eldridge wrote a grant for I think $40,000 or $80,000.
$85,000 grant.
That we're getting a part of that now, and we're replacing those block glass windows that were in there since the 50s, and the windows are going in there much bigger, much more efficient, and it's going to make a big difference. I think overall, once we get more of the windows replaced, it's going to make a big difference in our heating bill. And that money is grant money, so it's not tax dollars that's being spent here. And the boiler was serviced this month. Brought it back up to I think top efficiency. The only things that we really need now are we need to have our interior hot water pipes insulated and actuator replaced in room 3. But so far things are looking good right there. We have a good, excellent cleaning person in there 5 days a week. The place is always clean. The place is always busy. And I'm very proud of what's going on down there. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if people would be wanting to get married at MTM, I'd say no way. But we've had 2 weddings down there, believe it or not. One was at the Pavilion. last month, and every night of the week. It's a beautiful park. People bring their families there, and there's just only good things are coming from that right now. It's really nice. Some of the other programs that I didn't mention, but I'm just going to throw them out there. But these are the things we do. If you don't know, we have yoga program on Wednesdays. We have aerobics Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have a karate program for youth and adult. Co-ed softball league on Sundays. We offer swimming lessons, track. We have a new Zumba dance class. You got to try that if you haven't done it. If you're in good shape, if you want to go check it out. They're going to be on Wednesday nights at the MTM Center. Our summer sport camps, we do cheering, soccer, football, field hockey, tennis, and basketball in the summertime. Those are just 2-week camps that we do. We have a beautiful fitness center down there that's all come from donations or grants. And the equipment's excellent, and it's $10 a month. It's convenient, and now with our new keyless entry, as long as you have a partner, and you sign a waiver and the registration form, you're really good to go. We offer Halloween special events. We'll have a couple hundred kids on the infield under the lights Halloween night, sponsored also by the police department. We offer ski lessons, ski trips, and the rentals in the MTM Center have been incredible. We have people in there every weekend for not only weddings, but showers and other things. So our revenues are at $51,000 to date so far, and we still have quite a few months to go, and I'm expecting around $65,000 by the year end. I do want to, every time I come up here, I always like to mention some people that have been doing a lot of work for us, and we have several volunteers that have been very committed, and we wouldn't, it's a cornerstone of everything we do for the rec department. Dan Nicholson, Chief Nicholson, has been coordinating. He coordinated the whole gazebo thing with the Navy. Him and his wife live right on the corner up there by the monument, and they take care of that Civil War monument up there. Pine Knoll, George is out there caring for the gardens in the front of the building. He doesn't get paid for that, and the place always looks great. Bill Barr is always managing our flag out front. People, forget about little things like that, but I want to make sure it's still important for us. Sylvia Dowdy, Liz Curtis, always helping, and Andrea Mateo, always helping with the senior citizens. Bill Deal, a long-time Lisbon guy, won't let anybody next to the dishes when we're cooking, because he wants to make sure that he does all the dishes. Tried to help him once and almost got my hand cut off. But those are committed volunteers that I like to mention. Also, the MTM Board of Directors. They are a good guidance group of directors that have been very helpful. Their Recreation Committee meet every month and are the pulse of the community. They're the ones that bring us information that we can use to improve our programs. My staff, Jamie Martin, Sherry Garnett, Lynn Strout, Marcy Crosskill, and Lori Nodden, those guys are regular employees, either paid through by grants or by the programs themselves, with the exception of myself and Sherry and Jamie. But behind the scenes, the things that people never see, that we do every day, is that we pride ourselves in preventing accidents before they actually happen. A lot can go wrong. There's a lot of kids that are involved in recreation and that we have responsibility over for many hours of the day. Hiring the right staff, making sure we have the right volunteers, security. We do background checks on all of our volunteers and employees. We do staff training not just for first aid, but we do all kinds of training for coaches training and everything else. But we're very, very attentive to security, the liability, and also the safety of all of our staff and our participants. We can do even more, though. We can do more. We strive to make a positive difference in those who participate every day. We're very fortunate. But the social and physical benefits are really important for us to help build a close and healthy community. Our job is really to bring people together. We're fortunate in that way that we get to do that, but we build relations and getting our youth in our community to realize their potential. And if that happens, then we're successful in just that achievement. But that's what we try to do every day, and it's our job, and we like doing it. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Roger?
One thing I'd like to do, Mark, is I want to commend you for doing an outstanding job. For what you do for the youth in the community is pretty great, but what you do for the elder people is outstanding. And I know I hear a lot about it. I hear it from a lot of people. And I want to thank you, and
Thanks.
you do a wonderful job. But if they try to talk you into bungee jumping, don't let them talk you into it.
Bungee jumps, if they go first, I will.
Dale?
I just want to echo what Roger said. I'm very proud of what you do, and it seems like everything you touch is successful, and that's the character of you and your commitment to youth in this town, and I want to just thank you from my heart.
All right. Thank you. I think it has a lot to do with the people you surround yourselves with, because, like I said, we have dozens of volunteers that care about our kids, and they're committed. Couldn't do it without them, so I appreciate that.
Everybody needs a leader, though.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the council?
Great job.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, next item, please.
Finance Director's report?
Hello.
Hello.
My report's not nearly as long nor as exciting, but I'll try. We're looking to be right on track for revenue collection. Excise tax is approximately 25% collected, and this is right in line with where we were last year at this time. The state revenue sharing is about 21% collected, which is a little less than where we should be, but we are only through the first quarter, so we'll be continuing to watch that as it comes in. Investment income, it's continuing to be under budget due to the low rates. Again, it's just, we'll be continuing to track that as the year goes on. Recycling revenue is looking promising. We are about 30% collected, which is just slightly lower than where we were last year at this time. And Mark stole my thunder. Recreation revenue is up and looking great. We are 74% collected to what we budgeted versus 60% collected at this time last year. As far as our tax commitment, we are 53% collected on our total tax commitment for the year, so the money is coming in, and we continue to see that on a daily basis. That's all I have for revenues, unless you have some questions for me.
Questions on revenues, council? Okay, thank you.
Looking at the expense side, there's not much going on right now as far as variances. We are overexpended in abatements by about $4,000, and I'm sure we'll continue to see that increase. We are also overexpended in the town engineer's budget by about $29,000 due to the Route 9 project. But everything else, we're looking to be right on track from what I can tell so far this year, so. Unless there's anything specific you have for me, that's all I have for you.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
Earlier this evening, we actually sat through one of their early audit meetings, and just to let you know, the auditor was very impressed this year, and actually things are improving every year through the audit process. And she commends our finance director for being right on top of it and actually moving things forward, and it's actually looking really good. She had nothing but good things to say about the finances and how things are being done and the internal controls. So even along with the school had a great report this year along with us. So, I mean, it is good to hear from outside source that financially we are on top of what we're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments from council? Budget? Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, please.
Town Manager's report.
Last week was the MMA convention, and the Legislative Policy Committee met. It's a representative of all the towns throughout the state, and they put together an agenda that they would like everybody to agree to, and the lobbyists for the MMA try to promote whatever the concerns are. I listed those for you. This is a preliminary. We have another meeting scheduled in December before the legislature meets, but they're looking at tax reform, homestead exemption, the revenue sharing, highway simplification, business development, the EPS formula and funding model for the schools, There are some questions about tax exempt property and getting some of those back on the rolls. The mandates that are, fiscal mandates that are handed down by the state, that's a concern. And also looking at the K through 12 educational funding and trying to get that up to 55%. These are all, from what I could tell, aren't going to be really looked at as a bill, but they'll just be things that they'll be addressing to the legislature of concerns from the municipalities. Button's already talked about the Public Works building. That's all completed. It looks great. And hopefully we'll see some cost savings in the heating of that. The Knight Celotex trustee agreed to our $4,000 settlement, so that's a done deal. We sat down last week and we started looking at the maps, and we're going out and marking streetlights that we're going to be requesting CMP to remove in some of the back roads. Again, it's a work in progress. Once we get these done, we'll go back and look at some other streets, but we'll continue to work on that. In your packets that you had on your desk tonight, there was some information about the Economic Development Director and some of the things that was accomplished in that office. I know we had talked about holding on that position right now until we could discuss it. We did put out an ad. We had 11 applicants. We've got some very good applicants for this position. I'd like to go ahead and start the interview process, but I want to make sure that this group is on board with that.
Being part of that process, I've reviewed some of the applications, and indeed, there are some really good applicants there. I think all of you know my stand on economic development, so I suggest that we go into the interview process not promising anything, being very forward about it, letting the applicants know that we're not quite sure how we will fill the position, what capacity we'll fill it in. I think it's something that was discussed tonight at the candidates forum, that it's very important to most of the candidates that are running to continue to increase economic development in this town. I say move forward. That's my opinion on the matter.
Roger?
I disagree. I think that under the circumstances, the financial situation that we're in, there's no way that we should fill that position right now. There's not a whole lot going on at this particular time, and I think we ought to hold off and let a year go by and see where we are at that time. I think bringing people in and interview them for that position at this time, things are going to change by the time we would fill it if we do delay it, and I think we're wasting people's time.
Vern?
The one thing I just want to add is, as Gina mentioned earlier with the candidate forum earlier, pretty much everybody that was running for office actually did in one way or another mention that economic development would be important. The only questions would be is how it would get to that person. I think one of the things we have to do, and as long as the people know out front that we're not guaranteeing anything, I don't think it's wasting their time. I think people are out there looking for opportunities right now, so they're willing to do whatever they can. I think moving forward with it, I think it's very, very important that we interview people and find out the cost factor, what we can buy for the money that we have, and use that, if not do something today or tomorrow, at least keep the wheels moving forward so we can actually see what we can afford and what we can, and what we can buy with the money that we have available. I'm not saying that we're buying a person, but actually what we have available funds. So I think if we have people that have put in the applications, and I think we ought to at least look at them and find out what's out there and what we tentatively we're going to see for what we can get for the money we have available, not making any promises.
Yes, Dan?
I think maybe, Steve, that you could explain to the public what the process of this interview and who's on the committee and how you're looking at these applications.
We put together a committee that included George Roy from the credit union, Gina, myself, Rich Vayu from Floor Systems, another business person, along with Jessica, our finance director. We took the applications. We had 11. Each person got a copy of that, and they would sit down by themselves and rate these people on education, on experience. We did ask for salary requirements. Some complied, some didn't. Some provided us with letters of references. And we have not sat down as a group yet to make a decision on the candidates that we'd like to interview. I asked each group to pick out 3, possibly 4, if they felt there was a 4th person. And I think we've got some really good candidates. They're coming in at a reasonable cost. So once we do the interview process, the group will make a decision who they would like to look at and talk more about that, and then come back to this group and discuss it with you, what their selection is. There's an awful lot of progress that has been made from that office with the network, the main downtown network. If you look at this list of things that has been accomplished and needs to be an ongoing thing, you were able to get $87,000 in brownfield money that didn't come to the municipality. It came to the business community. That's really important for cleanup and things like that. If you don't get that money, it costs either the or the person buying the property to have to clean up any hazardous waste. You have people coming in here asking about businesses. I'm working with a local business person right now. We're meeting tomorrow with somebody who's very interested in the Rumble Mill. They've done a lot of different walkthroughs on that building. This person is coming from Texas and is partnering with somebody in Brunswick. We're really quite excited about that. They need to be able to sit down with somebody and go through all the state programs and and what we have to offer from our revolving loan funds. We have to keep maintaining our real estate database. We need someone who's going to manage all of the revolving loan funds. That's a pretty busy job. And right now, Jessica's trying to finish up the audit stuff, and she's picking up that, but it's a lot for one person doing other things. Your Campus Ave project never would have happened if you didn't have that economic development person partnering with Bath, Brunswick, and using that NSP money. There's just grant writing that they do. They outline other projects. They head up all the people that do the Moxie and do the revitalization projects. You're looking at 25 to 30 people that she tries to help coordinate and make things happen. I think if we want to build our tax base and create jobs, you need to fill that position. That's my take on it.
Add something to Matt? One of the things that we learned tonight that we knew a little bit about was actually kind of spelled out by the auditor is our revolving loan fund is a fund that needs to keep active. We need to keep using it, because if we don't, it actually has looked kind of poorly on how that system works. So the auditor did mention the idea that it is better for a town to actually have a very active person working with the businesses to use that money, so it's actually coming in and going out. It's really hard for us to collect interest on the money if it's sitting in our account. So it's really important that we have somebody there to use the programs that will help our local businesses. If not new business, the businesses we already have expand. So,
In the past couple of weeks, I've talked to 3 area businesses that were really excited about the loan program. They were in the process, and then Rosie left. And they've dealt in other towns and cities before. One of them particularly had dealt in other towns and cities before, and that type of revolving loan program was not available. I know that Brunswick doesn't have a revolving loan program, and I don't believe Bath does either. So we're very fortunate to have it, and I had somebody who went in and talked with Rosie who was kind of familiar with the program, and they were very impressed with the program that we had. So as Fern just said, it's important to keep that revolving loan active and keep it moving, because it's a great advantage to businesses to be able to go and get some startup or help out kind of money. It's a great package. You get a whole package with the request, and you have to fill it out. Also, the grant writing. Grant writing is not an easy thing to do. Rosie had really gotten that packet together for us, and I just hate to see the things that we've established and the help that we've had there for the businesses to go away, because there are people that want to keep their businesses here in town, and they want to expand, and they want to add and things like that, that if that goes away and we don't really have anybody to administer it, it's going to be difficult not to use. So,
Some of the people in the programs, like the Maine Development Foundation, the Downtown Main Street Group, is very worried that we're going to lose momentum in that program. And if we do, it's a lot of volunteers and energy that's been put forth, and it just will improve and help grow Lisbon in that area, and especially downtown and hopefully Village Street. I know Don Span, who's a realtor for the Rumble Mill, he's active in the Topsom local government, and one of the comments that he was made is that one of the things that Topsom has not done is remain consistent with their economic development. They hire a person, and if that person leaves, they haven't filled that position, and they lose momentum. And you need to have consistency in that area, and I think we need to fill that position.
Roger?
I think Mr. Crafts has let it be known that next year, we're looking at about $130,000 deficit coming through the state, or $1 million?
$1 billion.
Billion, yeah. Well, anyway, we're gonna be digging for money. One position, if we was gonna fill a position, I think we ought to look at an assessor. It's quite obvious that we need a lot of help there. And I just think that before we even consider putting money into economic development, we ought to try to get ourselves in condition to deal with a simple thing like tax bills. And we're gonna need funding to do that. And if we're cut funding at the state level, what in Lord's world are we gonna do? We're not gonna, it's not like you can find that kind of money just anywhere. We know what the whole budget system was this year, and we were scratching and scrounging for a few dollars, and we gotta come up with another $130,000 next year. Where are we gonna find it? And before we start filling positions that aren't 100% necessary, I think we ought to start filling positions that are 100% necessary. And that's my take on it.
Dale?
Well, Roger, it's true that we're gonna be a $1 billion deficit. That's part of the reason why we have to have economic development, because when you lose revenue, you have to make up revenue. That's where economic development comes in. I think that we ought to continue to look at these applications. I think that we ought to continue to look into our assessing problem was when Bill Van Tynen comes back to explain what happened, see where the taxes are gonna go from there, because, we could see an improvement in lowering taxes. We ought to look at that problem before we just throw the towel in on economic development, put it aside, because there is momentum going. There has been a lot of success in place and happening. I mean, just the two buildings. Just take the project behind the MTM, that building, and the investors coming to look from Texas to look at their Rumble Mill. If we just got them two projects in a year's time or in 2 years' time for the town of Lisbon, there's a significant amount of revenue that will continue to come in for years and years and years and years. And that's how you develop and bring in revenues to make up these shortfalls. We've got to make the shortfall up. You cannot stop in business when your revenues drop. You have to get creative in ways of bringing your revenues back up. You gotta out competitive. You have to be better at marketing your product than your competitor. And we as Lisbon have to outmarket our competitor, which are all the surrounding towns, Brunswick, Topsom, Lewiston. And if we don't outmarket them and we don't have businesses and opportunities in place for these businesses to come to, they're going to go to them other places and they're going to make up their revenue, and we're going to be sitting there figuring out how we're going to keep taxes down. So economic development has to go forward, and we will lose tremendous amount of momentum if we don't fill this position.
If you want to hear my opinion on economic development, I think economic development is very important, and I certainly have heard the arguments we've made here tonight. I just do think, though, that right now the national economy is just so bad that no matter what amount of money we spend on it, we could spend 3 times what we do, and we really wouldn't get much bang for our buck there. We're hunting rabbits that aren't there, and I think we're just spending $60,000 and that we don't have. So personally, I'd rather keep the position empty for this year and fill it again to the start of next year in the spring or summer. That's my preference. And as far as the revolving loans, I know it's possible to contract with someone like AvCog to help us manage that.
So, I mean, my personal opinion, just for what it's worth, is I think we should continue to move forward. As I agree, economic development is very important for all communities, and especially for our community at this point in time. And I do agree that I think we'll lose a lot of momentum. You've got a great volunteer base out there right now with this downtown revitalization and everything. And that's really the key to making this community succeed and to bringing business in, is that volunteer network. And to lose that volunteer network, I think, would be detrimental to the community at this point in time. So I'm in favor of continuing to go forward at this point in time and see what comes out of the applicants and what the committee brings back, and we'll have additional time to discuss it, I think, again, before going even all the way through and appointing anybody or hiring anybody.
Right, we're not at the point of hiring anyways, we're just
No.
looking,
Yeah,
so,
just looking.
you know.
So,
Okay.
okay?
What we'll do is we'll move forward with the process, and once we have finished up that, again, we won't promise anything, but we'll bring to you what we think is a good candidate and the cost factor behind it, and go from there.
Okay, next item, please.
Is secret ballot vote on naming the senior housing project on Campus Avenue?
Okay, we have been submitted with a bunch of names for this. Now, I have a question, since there's only 7 counselors and there's more than 7 names. What if everybody votes for one different name?
Oh, no, when we come back, we'll
We're in trouble.
Now, Twyla, as I understand this, we're voting secret ballot. You're going to collect these, but you're not determining the winner, the results today. When do we determine the results?
At the grand opening,
At the grand opening.
when they have the tour of the facility before.
Can I just make a suggestion that maybe Twyla could look at these after they're cast and just say if there is a winner or not? That way, we may have to go ahead and vote again. I made my choice.
The names that were recommended?
Yeah, let's read the
Sure, that's a
names
good
that
idea.
are recommended. Twyla, could you do that for us? So,
It says vote for one. Campus Commons, Greyhound Lane, Margareton Manor, New Start for special age persons, Special Home for You seniors, the Richard S. Ladner Senior Manor, name after Richard Ladner, Gramercy Park, and Amo Kisanak, I think is.
Kazanik.
Kazanik. Emil Kazanik.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful. Your pen exploded.
Screen.
Kind of like how she was counting elections, I think, isn't it?
You clearly have a winner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Now, you can't say a word for a long time.
I won't.
Okay.
Steve, you gonna mention that?
What would it take to find out? I have my checkbook. What would it take?
In conjunction with that, there will be an open house on 4 Campus Ave on Tuesday, October 26th, from 3 to 7. So if anybody wants to go visit their alma mater or just see what the building looks like prior to they start ripping it apart, please show up, and they will announce there what the name will be. So it'll be exciting. It's a nice event.
Very good. Okay. Next item, please.
Is tax update.
Mr. Van Tynen, as spoken earlier, has just got back from vacation. His office has been here through that whole time, visiting with people and explaining the tax billing and the 1.32 increase. He is expected to come before you at your next meeting, November 3rd, and give you a complete update of where he is and what his findings are and what his recommendations are. So he will be here on November 3rd. And he didn't have anything update really at this time. He's looking at the Route 9 properties. I know that was a concern at the last meeting. He has all the cards, and he was working on that today. Otherwise, he's going through each of the properties and double-checking everything. So he'll be here on the 3rd.
Okay. Next item, please.
Is under audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium and please state your name for the record and the audience at home.
Yes, sir.
I'm Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. It is my understanding through talking to the assessor's office, they have not found the documentation required for the commitment. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And we're not going to meet with him until the 3rd. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. A penalty will be charged if the MRI is filed late. It's supposed to be on 1 November. The penalty is $100 for the first day late, $20 for each day late thereafter on municipalities with a population of over 2,000. So what you're telling me is that first, we don't have the documentation to submit by 1 November. Second thing you're telling me is that we're going to have to pay a penalty until we get this done.
No. At the last time Mr. Van Tynen was here, he said that he had spoken to the Revenue Department, and that would not happen, and they just said get the paperwork in as soon as he could, hopefully by November 1st. And he may have it in by November 1st. He's just not going to address this council until November 3rd. So that's what he has told me.
Okay, so there's no chance we're going to have to pay penalty?
No.
Okay. That's right. But we're still illegally collecting taxes.
That's a question for Mr. Van Tynen and our attorney.
No, according to the state of Maine Property Tax Billing Bulletin 15. It says the most essential requirement is that the record of the assessment, the evaluation, be certified by the assessor and permanently bound before, and before is underlined, the taxes are committed to the collector. You just told me they weren't there. And we're collecting taxes, so you're in violation of the state law.
As long as the Department of Revenue doesn't have an issue with how we're doing this, trying to fix some mistakes, and according to our attorney, we are okay at this point. So the recommendation that we are getting is to just get this cleaned up and taken care of as soon as possible.
Well, I understand that. I understand that. We need to get it cleaned up and cleaned up right.
That's
And
correct.
I think they're doing a good job down there doing.
I think they
They're
are
on the
too.
right track. I agree with that. But the fact is that we're still collecting taxes. And we don't have the evaluation book posted down there. And that's a violation of the state of Maine law. So I don't think that anybody can say that unless you've got it in writing. Do you have it in writing that we are not in violation?
Do not have it in writing.
Then I assume that we have to be in violation because it is a requirement by the state. So we're still collecting taxes illegally.
Richard Maine. Tax collectors are authorized to collect prepayment of taxes prior to commitment throughout the year. So if there's no commitment, the tax collector is still authorized to collect taxes. And then if the party has overpaid for the entire year, then they can be reimbursed or it can be applied to the following year. However, tax collectors are authorized to accept prepayment of taxes at any time during the year.
Mr. Chairman, just for the public's information, would you ask anybody on the council that screwed the taxes up on purpose to raise your hand?
Did
That's
anybody
what I
in the
thought.
council screw the taxes up on purpose?
Now, would you ask anybody on the council trying to straighten the problem out? Raise your hand, please.
Assume we all are.
I thought so. Thank you.
Mildred Ryder, Route 9. I'd like to know what's going on about the taxes on Route 9. Have they changed anything about it yet? Are they going to drop them because we don't own that land anymore, or what's going on?
Mr. Van Tynen had all the cards with him today, and they were working on that. So I know he's working on it.
Have the people on Route 9 been notified that they've been overtaxed for land that they do not own anymore?
We don't know that yet.
Well, I do believe that everybody should be notified so that they can come in and take care of it themselves. I was also told last night that if we don't like being taxed for the land that we don't own, all we got to do is walk into the town office and tell them we'd like it taken off our bill. Is that correct?
You'd have to submit for an abatement. And then,
And then you take it
and
off
then
our bill?
No, then the assessor will review the request for abatement and make a decision.
If they ever do get this mess from Route 9 straightened out, is the town of Lisbon town office going to notify my mortgage company so that my house payment doesn't go up because they're charging me for something that I no longer own? It's included in my house payment, and my house payment will go up because the town is screwing me for something I don't own.
If an adjustment is made, all the mortgage owners, lenders get notified.
If an adjustment's made, you mean I may still have to pay for land I don't have?
I didn't say that. I said I would recommend that you be patient and let Mr. Van Tynen do his job, and there will be an answer when he's done.
But how long will it take? Because my mortgage company, the end of the year, will up my house payment. I don't appreciate it for something I don't owe. So how many months is this going to take?
He thought he'd be done, I think, by the end of the year.
The end of the year. Up goes my house payment for something I don't owe. I don't appreciate it at all, I'll tell you. I will be getting in touch with my lawyer. I'm not going to pay for something that I no longer own and have my house payment go up. You people knew when the tax bill was sent out that we no longer owned that land, and we still got charged for it. Now, I would think that's quite illegal to charge somebody something for that they don't own. Am I right or wrong?
I can't speak to that.
Well, where's the
Because
lawyer?
I don't know how much work that had been done and if he was notified of
But-
all the land changes
But
made.
you know, everybody on Route 9, where they've done work, lost land. Am I correct?
As far as I know,
The town
yes.
knew that, and they still charged us for the land we lost. I mean, the town knows we don't own that land. Why was we charged for it?
I think one of the concerns I have is as a town, where the road shifted back and forth, that some people lost more than others, so it wasn't an equal amount. Until that was actually surveyed and gone over with that tax person through the abatement process, I don't think there was anybody in the town that could assess that some people might even gain land.
Well,
You know what I mean?
My
So-
understanding is that the state should have sent us new deeds for all those houses along there that were adjusted. That we don't need to do an abatement process for every single house come down the street. That the town should have gotten new deeds for those houses because that was a state forced process.
Did you?
I
did
believe
every-
that, I don't know if they're on record here, but that's
Yeah.
how my understanding of it is the process works, that the state
Yeah.
would send new deeds to the town.
That's a question for Mr. Van
Yeah, it's for
Tynen.
Mr. Van Tynen.
Can I just add something also? I think also, Mrs. Ryder, is that that whole project isn't done yet. And I think that maybe waiting until it's done, and I understand, I live on Route 9 too, so I understand your concern. But I think that there were, as I think it was Fern just said, there were so many, some gains, some loss. Nobody really knew how much. Things changed along the way. I know with our own property, things changed several times. My father-in-law's property, things are still changing. So I think it would be very difficult for some to come in and say, this is set and this is the way it is. I know the road was changed several times. Some of the engineering that was done was horrible, to say the least, and had to be redone. Some of, in front of us, we were told we'd get open ditches. We now have closed ditches. There are others that, there are so many variables in there, it's difficult to say exactly what you gained and what you lost. And I understand, I'm very frustrated with the whole project myself. I'm done with the dirt, I wish it would be over. But I think, just to add to it, I think it would be great if we can wait and just find out what we can do about that. And part of the process, it takes time, unfortunately.
Okay, I called the town office this week, and they had somebody that has something to do with the taxes call me back, and I goofed. I did not write his name down. I wished I had have. One of the head guys talked to me for quite a while. And he says, I promise I'll call you back today, because I said, I think the people on Route 9 should be notified. Do you want to put it in the paper, or do you want me to? No, we don't want to do that. We will call you back today. Exactly 4:30, they called me back. Keep me calmed down, so I didn't notify everybody on Route 9 that they was paying for taxes for land they don't own.
Well, I think most people do realize that they've lost land in some cases, as I said. And I know that all the paperwork we got, it told us what we lost. So, I mean, if people don't want to wait, maybe they should come in and find out from the state
Oh.
exactly what they can find out.
This guy also told me, if I'm not mistaken, that he's got copies of what people have lost, and he will be taking care of it. But give him a month. I wish I'd have written his name down.
Alan Gove
I don't remember.
or Bill Van Tynen, those are the only two people in the office today.
Well, it was one of the two. And he said that he had some paperwork on the land, and he would be taking care of it, but he was asking for a month to do it in. Now, the end of the year is in a month. Should be in November. I would like it mine taken care of before the end of the year, so that my house payment don't go up. Thank you.
Michelle?
Michelle Trammell. I do believe that there is a little bit of misinformation being put out there, because the town attorney confirmed at the end of the workshop at the last meeting, and there's a counselor sitting there who spoke to the town attorney, we are illegally collecting taxes, and because we are, any citizen that has paid theirs has the right to request it back plus 8% interest. It's a state law. There's a counselor sitting there who actually spoke to the town attorney to confirm the amount, and the attorney confirmed it's 8%. So if we're not illegally collecting, why would people be able to request a refund of their money plus 8%? That's a concern, because you're going to be paying out, you could potentially be paying out more than you collect because of that 8%. Were you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that. I was not aware of that, but, I mean, we'll certainly look into it. I mean, I trust Mr. Main's opinion. He is an assessor and he works for Lewiston, so, I mean,
Right.
but,
I'm just saying our own town attorney confirmed that is
I mean,
the amount, and
I
it
will
was
ask the town
confirmed by one
manager
of our
to
counselors.
reconfirm that with the town attorney tomorrow.
I guess it's just a little concerning because, I mean, here we are 2 weeks later since that workshop occurred, and there's still all these things going on, or a lot of things that seem to be unanswered that I think we should have looked into, because that question was actually asked. And I believe Councilor Cody asked what the penalty was. At that time, Mr. Van Tynen said he wasn't aware of any. There was further conversation that actually occurred with the attorney, and he actually confirmed that, yes, actually, a citizen can request full refund plus 8%. I mean, I believe the council that spoke to the attorney might be able to comment on
I can't
that.
dispute anything. I mean, I didn't hear it. I wasn't part of the conversation.
how
All I
will-
can do is just ask to have it looked into.
how it all occurred, Mike. Somebody had made the comment, excuse me, that they heard that they could get more than 8% interest on their money. And the town attorney stood right there and told me in front of a couple other people that no, the law is 8% interest, and you can ask for your tax money back because it was collected illegally, is what the town attorney said.
Yes, Rod? Dale?
I think Mr. Roy's got some info, do you have some information with you on that?
I've got all kinds, but I've got the wrong information.
Because it's,
wrong. It's 25%.
We had heard 25, but the town attorney said no, it was 8, so that's why we need,
That generally cases like this are settled for 8%. I asked if the law was changed because as I was reading it, and I don't have it right here, it definitely said 25%. And you have to file the Superior Court to get it. I questioned about a class action suit that could break this down.
Real quick.
Man, that's that. I hope, Michelle, that everybody that pays taxes, and part of the meeting that we had before this, the forum, was everybody asking for people to volunteer and help the town and do something for the town. As Rick actually mentioned, there's no one, I think, in the town that actually wanted this to happen. And I just hope people are patient and understand that, unfortunately, you take money back, it comes out of the same pocket, because it's taking money out of one pocket, you know what I mean, to put it in the other, because unfortunately,
Taking
we are
more.
the town.
you're taking more
So,
out.
unfortunately, hopefully people are patient and actually work with us to try to fix the problem and not create a bigger one for all of us, because it's our town, it's everybody's problem.
Right, but part of
Yeah.
problem solving is forecasting what might be a problem. Being that this is out there and the town attorney spoke about it with a few of us at the end of that workshop, I think it's something that we need to look into and have a head start on it, because yes, we don't want a class action lawsuit. I've spoke many times about everybody dotting their i's, crossing their t's, and I think this is something, because it is a financial impact to our town, and it is out there. I mean, whether it's 25% or 8%, a penny over what anybody's paid is a penny out of the town's pocket that's going out that you're not entitled to collect back. And that's my concern is if we've collected 53% at this point, or what, I apologize, I don't remember the exact figure, but I know it was 50-something in total that we've collected collaboratively in our taxes. Any amount that you've collected that somebody asks for back and they're entitled to a percentage over, is that percentage over, you're not going to get that back. You're already losing out, and justifiably, I understand, and I appreciate the fact that you guys were proactive in waiving fees and interest. But that's also money that you're missing on what you haven't collected either. So, I mean, there's an accumulative effect is my point, and I think we should be proactive in researching this, because it is out there, it's trickling around through the town, which is why I had asked at the end of the last meeting, and I'm asking again, because it's going to keep coming about, and I think we need to be proactive is my point, because I don't want it to cost us more. In the end, it could cost you more than that percent, which is my point.
I think it's a really valid point, and, you know, one of the things after going through the last meeting, and hopefully as a council that, you know, we actually, along with Mr. Maines, is hopefully the assessor that we actually hired actually knows the laws probably better than I do, and hopefully better than anybody that's not assessor. And I don't believe at this point in time he would lead us down a path that would cause us more grief. I really assume that he's actually spoke to the state and has pretty much everything covered. I mean, that's only an assumption, because you got to trust in the people that are working for you, hopefully at this point, and hopefully they have it figured out. I don't think that he would have kind of put it on the back burner and went on vacation not worried about it if he actually felt that there was some type of legal downfall that we could have by not moving forward immediately. That's my hope.
Right. I just want to make sure we're not talking about two totally different things. So having your letter of commitment on file versus your paperwork in the state, I believe, are two totally different things that we're looking at.
I'm going to talk about the whole process. And
Okay.
hopefully he's looking at the whole picture.
Right. Well, I think if you remember, though, we did ask him, and he was standing at the end by Councilor Lunt, and his response was he wasn't aware of any because this issue had never come up before. If I recall, that was his response. So respectfully, if you don't understand something or know something, I respect if somebody can say they don't know, but I think it's up to us, whether it be townspeople or councilors. I think we need to look into it because of the ramifications financially, and that's my concern.
And I know, speaking with Steve, that he's not just called the state once. I know he's been in regular contact trying to figure out exactly where we are. So
Right.
hopefully he has a really good handle on what's happening. I mean, that's the only thing we can hope for.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping. Everybody's being proactive. I just want to know that we're looking into this because of
the potential backlash. That's all. I just want to make sure that somebody's looking into it and checking because of, like I said, you're going to end up having potentially, hopefully people will sit tight and wait, but you could potentially have more going out than you've collected. And that's what I just want to make sure that we're taking care of that. So.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to speak again, but again, tax collectors are authorized to collect prepayment of taxes. That is prior to any written commitment that is done. The remedy, if there is a defective commitment, is to correct the error and recommit. And at that time, the period of interest, because there is no, if you want to call it no taxes, tax commitment at this point that is valid, rather than talk about illegal and violations of the law and things like that, those are things that I get concerned about because the work is done by people who are people, and they try to be professionals, and sometimes they don't always get every I dotted and every T crossed, and sometimes they fail to do the required paperwork. The law requires that once the paperwork is signed and the taxes are officially committed, that the municipal valuation return is sent into the state either November 1st or 30 days after the paperwork is signed. So, for example, suppose the paperwork is signed in December. Then the municipality has 30 days from the date that the paperwork is signed in order to get that MVR into the state. And I know I had to work in that kind of a situation, and we committed taxes about the 17th of December. And then we had 30 days to get the paperwork into the state, which is simply a report. I think it's helpful for us to remember that taxpayers in Lisbon, whether they like taxes or not, try to be upfront and support the municipality. I don't know if any of you noticed, but the finance director said that 53% of the total year's taxes have already been collected, have already been paid. That means that there are a number of people, and I've talked with some of them. They brought the money in, and they paid the entire year. And I said, well, suppose the mill rate changes. That's okay. Just put it on next year and take it off my bill next year. They're concerned that the tax situation be resolved, but they're also concerned that the towns function as a municipality. Now, one thing that I am concerned about, and I'm really offended by it, and I think that probably a lot of other people might be offended by it as well, is that the council, and I'm going to bash all of you, the council voted to do away with the interest until June 30th on all people who hadn't paid their taxes. Well, we've already gotten 53%. We had 85% at that time. I think that it needs to be looked at again. An interest of 7%, which is the state required interest rate, be reinstituted on March 16th for those people who do not pay their assessment, their taxes by that time. I think it's offensive to those people who pay their taxes on time and work hard to do so, and they take money from other funds to do that. To go ahead and say, without any study at all, without saying, well, are these the same people that don't regularly pay their taxes until the last gun is fired? You know, is this a business? Suppose one business didn't pay their tax. We need to remember that you're representing the entire municipality and not just 5 or 10% of the people that you think need a helping hand. Those people can be dealt with through programs, through assistance, in all kinds of ways. Those people can be dealt with. But I think you need to think long and hard about representing all the people. We need to have the tax situation resolved. We need to have it resolved as quickly as possible. Now, people are talking about, I've lost all of this land. Let's just say that they have an acre and a quarter, acre and a half, up on Route 9. And they've lost a quarter of an acre. So they only own now an acre and a quarter. Well, the first acre is always the base lot acre. It's always that. So that's not going to change. So all of their adjustment is going to be a quarter of an acre of excess land, which may be $2,000 or $3,000 for the entire acre. So if they lose a quarter of an acre, they're losing maybe $1,000 in value. We're talking 20 bucks. That's what we're really talking about. I think it's helpful for people to just take a step back, take a deep breath, and let's say, okay, let's wait until the report is in, not make any accusations, not make any more wild rumors, but just wait until the report is in, have it looked at. Mr. Van Tynen is doing that, and is along with staff here from the municipality. And I think that at that point, you will be pleased with what is done. Nobody's pleased to have to pay a whole lot of taxes. I'm certainly not pleased. But I think that we need to wait, take a deep breath, and not just get angry with everybody because we don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Thank you. I don't mean to bash you real hard, but
Bash us anytime, you know,
Mike,
it's all good.
I'm going to respond to that, please. There are people that have property on Route 9 that lost $40,000 pieces of property. $40,000, no $2,000. Just in front of my house, I lost $6,600 worth of property. It's not a small little toss it away that you're trying to make it out to be. We owned from the center of Route 9 with our properties. That road had never been purchased. For you to come to the microphone and make such an idiotic statement as you just made, I wish you'd please not bother, because you're wrong in what you have just said, and the information that you brought forward is completely and totally the truth is not there.
was you paid $6,600 for that
Yes,
property?
I was.
Okay. That is not a tax value. That is a sale value of a right-of-way. And it's a different value that you're talking about.
But the property was to the center of the road, and it was not just to the side of the road. So everybody on Route 9 owned to the center of that road. And there are some people up there that have very large parcels of land that go on for a long stretch.
For the assessment purposes, that may only be a quarter of an acre or a half an acre. For the sale price, to you, it was $6,600. For somebody else, it might be $40,000. But it still does not do away with that first acre and the excess land that is also involved.
Dot?
My name is Dot Fitzgerald. I'm a resident in Lisbon Falls. It's my understanding that assessed value is determined by sales. Is that correct? Is that not correct?
I don't know. I'm not the assessor.
Someone must know. to my best of my knowledge and my understanding, is that assessed value, when assessors try to determine a value for assessment purposes in a town, they look at sales, do they not?
I think that's probably correct if you were having somebody do an appraisal on a piece of property. I don't know if the state went by and did an appraisal on all the property that they were taking. I don't know the process. So it's hard to say what they used as a determining factor, what the value was. I don't know those answers, only the state
Well,
does.
maybe you could get an answer, we could have an answer by the next town council meeting, because we have a former town assessor here right now. I don't know if he could answer that question.
What Dick was saying, it's not, the way it's assessed as a house lot, everything else is extra. You can lose a lot of land and not lose much in assessment. It's just the way it works, it's not.
Number two, we've had a land revaluation that was not used on this, for tax purposes, on this tax year. Are you people going to, or is someone, assessor, going to go forward and review all of the buildings, properties in town to properly assess their value?
That
was-
is part of our plan, providing we can fund it to go do that, right? As we've explained at prior meetings, the council had elected to take a phased approach because we couldn't get the town to appropriate a full amount of money to do a complete valuation in a short period of time. So we've gone off and done the land piece. Now we have to go do the building measure and check the inside of the house and everything, list and measure stuff. And we're going to try to do that if we can fit that into next year's budget. Now, you've heard a bunch of discussion about budget situations and where we're at. I can't sit here and promise you next year that we're going to be able to do that. We might be able to do it piecemeal within our existing budget without doing that, but it won't get done as quickly, you know, things like that.
Well-
I don't know.
I attended the meeting last April of this year when Mr. Van Tynen gave his report at the high school, when the town council was considering hiring him. And it was my understanding that you were going to do the revaluation in 3 phases. Number 1, a land revaluation. Number 2, the assessor, who is then Mr. Dow, was going to go around and visit all of the properties and not measure, but evaluate them for improvements, and or whether they're have deteriorated, and use that as kind of a middle road. And then next year or the year after, hire someone, and it was mentioned college students or whatever, to go around and measure all of the buildings to complete the revaluation. So it was going to be done in 3 phases. Am I correct?
That's our plan. Again, it gets down to, can we put enough money in the budget based on everything else to go do that? Dale?
Well, we did have, when we was going through the budget process, there was a amount of money that we was gonna hire 4 people to work with Down. We pulled that out of the budget.
Okay.
That ended. We didn't have the money to go to that second
Right.
phase. So that's why it's not gone to the second phase, because as a council, we was looking for places to cut, and that's one place we cut. So the plan that we have in place didn't go forward for budget reasons.
The last presentation that we had, and that was one of the questions I asked him, moving forward, what would be the best way to get fair and equitable for everybody, which would be a complete evaluation. He did mention, once he kind of sorted through what he has to do now, that he would put together a proposal for us to do that, and I'd be kind of waiting to see, interesting what his proposal is, and whether or not it's a 1-year thing, a 2-year thing. But I think what we need to do is make a plan and then try to stick by it and hopefully get the funding to do it. It's something needs to be done. I don't think anybody's argue. Jerry was asking for that years ago. You mean, just, it's a process that needs to be done. It's just the idea of having the funds and the ability and the support of the town to do it. Because, you know, the town supported a lot of projects since then. It's just, that reevaluation just doesn't sound like a good ticket to say yes to,
Right.
you know?
On the same vein, kind of, personal property taxes. When I was preparing for tonight, I did call Mr. Sampson and asked about personal property taxes. Does the state have a set way of assessing personal property? I didn't think so, but I wanted to ask, and he said, no, this is up to the discretion of each town and city municipality, that how they assess personal property. We have some wonderful roofers and siders in this town that does even window installation, to assess their personal property, assess them. As I said, most of them own their own home. The vehicles they put on the road, they pay excise tax, and to assess them huge amounts of personal property is triple taxation. Mr. Sampson suggested that a fair way of doing it, as I said earlier, is forgive the first $5,000 of personal property valuation. He said that to do the paperwork on it and everything is just cost more than the money that you would get. And his suggestion is to do this across the board, because I'm not an assessor, and I don't know if you're planning on, well, hiring a full-time certified assessor, but I would hope something like that would be put into practice, because triple taxation is kind of not right. And I hate to see small businesses, they're our lifeblood, you know, and across the board, you know, for everyone, Dingley Press, First Choice Printing, everyone, you know, the first 5,000's forgiven. I don't think we'd lose a lot of money by doing that, and maybe we'd either gain or we'd at least gain goodwill. But it's just a thought and a suggestion. On another vein, something good news. I had a call yesterday morning from George Epham, and he said, finally, I'm getting some water. They were supposed to start digging the ditch today from the new well, which I think my understanding is it only produces a half gallon a minute, which is not a lot. And the ditch, the new well will produce water for the house, the old family homestead that he's going to be renting out again. And he said that he thinks the problem with the contamination of his existing well on his present home, the new home, will be corrected because they're putting a sleeve down into the well, and they think that the contamination is coming in through seams, and he's hoping that corrects that problem. I've got a little something else here too. I've been attending Maine Department of Transportation meetings. They had one August 17th in Topsom. I attended, Ryan Layton attended. And that study was mostly on traffic studies, problem areas, accidents, things like that. I think it was October 7th, they had a meeting in Lewiston. Town Manager Eldridge was there and Chief Brooks was there. The Maine Department of Transportation has 3 proposals. Proposal number 1 is 3 lanes beginning at 295 in Topsom to the Little River Bridge in Lisbon Falls, continuing again at the Lisbon-Lewiston town line to the Turnpike Bridge that they're redoing in Lewiston. 3 lanes, 2 lanes each way, and a center turning lane. Proposal number 2, I'm glad you're all sitting down, 5 lanes. 5 lanes, 2 lanes each direction, and a center turning lane. And I'm asked, do you realize what a bottleneck that will create when you're coming into Lisbon or Lisbon Falls? Well, they thought that that would cost too much money, so that might be not happen. But it's still disturbing. We're a small town. We have a lot of businesses here, large and small, trying to develop the Warumbo Mill and the property. That would be just horrible. Their third proposal is a bypass of the town of Lisbon. We at Lisbon are a hindrance for people to get from the coast to Lewiston and Auburn at 70 miles an hour. 5 miles probably from end to end. I don't know just how long, 5 to 6 miles. And a total of 4 traffic lights, but we are a hindrance. So I just thought everyone should be aware of what is happening, what Maine Department of Transportation is doing, their study, and there will be another meeting right here. The first week, he seemed to think it was going to be the first week in November.
No, they've, that didn't work. I think they're looking at the, either the 15th or the 18th of November to
Okay.
try to get everybody in the same room.
Okay, I would.
Be announced.
They put a fairly good-sized legal announcement in both Lewiston and Brunswick papers, and I would love to see every business owner here in town here at that meeting. I'd like to see a huge, huge attendance. Residents, whatever they decide is going to impact the town of Lisbon and their businesses for the good or for the not so good. It's going to impact us, and we need to be proactive, and we need to give our input. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other audience participation? Okay, next item,
Counselor Communications.
Councilor Communications. Roger?
At the last meeting that we had, Mr. Ventine stood up and addressed the council and a group of people here. He was asked right off at the beginning of the meeting if there was a tax commitment. This is a man that worked with Mr. Dow some on his taxes, and he says, it might be somewhere lost in the paperwork. And then about halfway through the meeting, he says, was asked a question, and he says, well, I talked to Mr. Dow, and he didn't think that he did. And then at the end of the meeting, he said, oh, yeah, there was never a tax commitment. I mean, there was no communication with anybody, but the story changed, and it was pretty obvious to me that he wasn't telling the truth. He was covering someone's butt. I didn't leave here with a real warm, fuzzy feeling about Mr. Ventine. I think that if he was working in the best interest of the people of this community, he'd have been right forth at the beginning and said, no, there was never a tax commitment done. I mean, why hide it? Why lie about it? Why, not come out with the truth and tell people what's really going on? That bothers me. We just came off a very unfit human being on that job as Mr. Dow, and then we come into another one that's going to start off his tenure with a lie. And I just didn't like it at all. And I think that ought to be addressed. Another thing, I called Mr. Terrio, had a little chat with Mr. Terrio. I talked to Dale, and Dale told me that I needed to talk to him. So I did. And he told me I had an issue I wanted to ask about, personnel issue, and he says, I'm not your attorney. I work for Mr. Eldridge. And I says, come again? The town attorney works for the council. The town manager is an employee. And when the town attorney tells me that no, he's not going to represent me, he's going to represent the town manager, I think it's time to say, au revoir, monsieur. This is wrong. This is wrong, wrong, wrong. And a man that's going to do that doesn't belong representing our community. And I think the council had better step up and look at this issue. He's representing the council in the Thibodeau case in Lisbon, but he's not representing the council in any personnel issue. All of a sudden, it's now, I don't work for you, I work for the town manager. Well, if he works for the town manager, let's send the town manager the bill, not the town of Lisbon. We're paying for that to represent the people of this town, to represent the business of this community, and to represent the council, elected officials by the people in this community, and not the town manager. And I think that's going to be addressed by this council in the next meeting, and I think we should act upon it. I think it's time that we get an attorney. Yes, I do. I've got it taped at home, because I knew when I was going to talk to Mr. Yes, I will. Mr. Terrio sent me. Well, I've got that taped at home, and I'll be glad to, because when he told me to call Mr. Terrio, I figured that was the number one thing I'd better do is tape it, and I did. And that was what Mr. Terrio told me.
I think the town and the council have a right to that as well, because that's an accusation
Absolutely.
that really needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. I will do it. And next week, it should be addressed, because I didn't appreciate that comment, and I don't think that that's the way that this town should be operating.
Well, I understand if that's exactly what happened. I don't blame you at all for feeling the way you do, but I would like to see it.
Okay. I'll bring it in.
Bill?
Because I had the conversation, same questions that I told you to call him on, because I didn't want it secondhand from me. So that's not the same response that I got from Mr. Terrio.
That's what he told me.
I'm just saying, I'm just telling you what, because I told you what he told me. So I don't know why Mr. Terrio would be telling me one thing and you telling you another.
Have Mr.
So-
Terrio here next week.
So,
We'll address it.
well, I think he ought to need to be addressed. He ought to have a chance to defend himself, and he ought to be here when we have accusations against him, so he can defend himself.
Absolutely.
Am I wrong in my thinking process here?
Well, I agree with the lady in the audience. I think you should produce the tape so that we can all hear
No,
it.
am I wrong in thinking that the town attorney should represent the council?
The town attorney will represent the council as a whole,
Right.
not as an individual.
No, as a
Right,
whole.
as a whole.
That's right. And I was told that no,
He will
can't.
probably, if we were to take some type of action on a personnel matter directly to the town manager, I wouldn't be surprised if he would recommend for us to get another counsel unbiased and step away from the situation, because he deals so closely with the council and so closely with the town manager for that. So it wouldn't surprise me if the attorney would say, I recommend, for the benefit of both you and the individual you're dealing with, to engage a different attorney in that manner.
That's exactly what he told me.
Well, isn't that exactly what I just said?
No, that's not exactly what you just said.
He
That
said
is
that
not
he was not
exactly.
going to represent her.
He is telling you that he is saying that in his best interest and ours, because of the relationship he has with both parties in representing the town, right? Because we work for the town, right? He's representing the town,
Exactly.
both for the town manager and for the council, that if there's an issue between the two of us, he will recommend that you get an unbiased attorney to represent the situation that you're trying to address. Because it would look poorly, both in the public's eye and everybody else's eye, that he might be showing favoritism towards the council or favoritism towards the town manager. So he would recommend that you get an unbiased, separate attorney to take whatever action you were thinking about taking. That would not surprise me.
That's what he said.
But that's not what you just said, not even close to what you just said.
Well,
You
that's what he told
simply
me.
said, the town attorney said, he would not represent you, the council,
Oh, that's what he told me.
right?
He
And-
says, he said, I cannot respond, I cannot represent the council, I represent the town manager.
I don't believe he said that he cannot
Let me prove it
represent
to you.
that, so.
Mike, I also called Roger Terrio, and I got the same response that Dale got, that he works for the town of Lisbon, and when things get hairy or sticky, it is better to have an unbiased legal representation, and I was told that by Mr. Terrio.
That is the way I was interpreted it.
Any other council communications?
Actually, I would
Yeah,
also, very much on the conversation we're going right now. I mean, I actually spoke to Lori today because she had actually sent me an email that she was going to be here of her concerns. And I was actually called by a business person, actually multiple business people in town. Since I have a business, they always call just kind of see what's going on, and whether it's good, bad, or evil, I seem to hear from it. People asking us if, as the council, need to take immediate action. You guys going to take immediate action for the problems you have? And I said, well, explain the problems, and I'll try to explain what I can. And they said, well, you have a chairperson that's actually doing all kinds of illegal stuff, and when there's a recall, don't you know, for him, they're signing papers, and mismanagement of funds. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, where are you getting your information? And they said, well, that's what's happening in this town, and if you council people don't say anything about it, odds are it's true. And unfortunately, I guess the evil thing we've done as a council is not actually speak and communicate, which I think that's why, I mean, I have a new idea what our council communications ought to be, is us communicating, because unfortunately, away from this, we can't communicate. We can't get together to talk. We can talk individually. And when we start talking about calling lawyers and talking about, I mean, I can actually give my opinion, and hopefully everybody will give their factual opinions of what's happening. I mean, Mike's actually been serving the town for over 8 years. He does a great job when it comes to financial issues and for everything else that he does for the town. Very knowledgeable because he's been there, done that. I can honestly say in the last 3 years, I still haven't gained a tenth of the knowledge that Mike brings to this council. I myself, as a councilor, and I'll make an opinion, not my opinion, my facts, and Lori kind of agreed today, the only thing that I could pick on Mike for as being a councilor and a chair, since we voted him in as chair, is a question about maybe some communication may be better. Because that's the key of this whole world, is communication. As councilors, commuting with the town, picking up our packets, communicating with town manager. Because unfortunately, our town manager and our chair is only as good as what we give them. As councilors, if we have a question, we need to call the chair or call the manager to get the information. I would like it to be heard. I don't think we need any executive session or anything. I'd rather be able to put on the table, is anybody on this council more aware of legal issues or just terrible things that Mike has done as being a councilor or as being chair? I mean, I'd like to hear it because I'm hearing it from everybody else in the town, and there's people out there conveying that. So as councilors, I think it's our duty to the citizens of Lisbon to actually, we're here. Either bring something up that's factual or let the people know that, unfortunately, we're beating on someone that Roger actually gets up and said, we need people to volunteer and step forward. We have people to do it, but unfortunately, they get to the point where we start throwing rocks at them. So either we have factual stuff that Mike is a terrible person, we should remove him and do that immediate action, or we need to, as councilors, do our duty to promote why it is. I mean, I'm just asking
I don't
fairly.
think anybody said Mike was a terrible person. I think what the issues was information that was not distributed amongst the councilors. That's where the issue became.
Communications.
Big time. And that was, Gina even mentioned it herself, that she was held out of the loop on this whole tax thing. We were all held out of the loop on this whole tax thing. These are issues that people expect us to make decisions on, and if we're not given the information that we should be given, how can we make opinions that are actual?
The facts that I know about Mike and the information is Mike actually showed us the email that he got the day that the tax bills were going out. Okay, so I mean, as you know, wherever that communication may fall, I mean, the stuff that's making us look bad as council is allowing someone to chair a committee that actually just misrepresents the town. Is to me, if it's a communication issue, absolutely, that's what we need to do. We need to communicate more. As a council, we need to use council communications to communicate and talk about our concerns. Unfortunately, our concerns leave here, and then you see them at the transfer station, okay? Unfortunately, it's either right or wrong, and if it's wrong, we need to do something about it, but we're the council people. If we see there's a problem, we need to express it, and if there's not a problem, we need to actually put good was good and bad was bad.
I would like to see the charter changed to allow the council, just the council, to sit down and discuss a lot of issues amongst themselves, because I don't even know where a lot of issues are, how you feel about issues.
I think that needs to be public. We got
Or
banged
we gotta
for
have meetings and do it, because a lot of times, we come into these meetings, we haven't seen each other for 2 weeks. We sit down, we get a documentation of things that we don't even have any idea what they're about. We haven't been given any instruction, we haven't and we gotta come in and make a decision on it.
I tell you,
And that's
Roger,
not fair to the townspeople.
it's not, and I can tell you, I try to get my packet as early as possible, and at least 3 days out of the week, I spend my lunch break here in the town office, okay? I go in and sit with Steve, I ask him what's coming up in this week's, just to see if there's anything going on. If I have questions, if it's coming out, he'll actually give me recommendations, go to the department head. Unfortunately, the duty of the chair and the manager is to give us much information, but they can't actually deliver it to our house. I mean, we need, as councils, to be very proactive to get that information. If we're looking at information for the first time when we sit down, you're right, that's absolutely wrong. There should be nothing given to us the night that we sit here to make a decision on. Unfortunately, most of the stuff that's on the agenda to be decided on is in our boxes on Friday night. You know, it's one of those things, that communication thing. When we first came on council, we got banged really bad for going to executive session, even for stuff that needed to be. People wanted it public. That's why I'm saying right now, talk. If
Do it public.
we have concerns, let's talk about it. They deserve to hear
I
it.
agree with that 100%.
So, I mean, going back to my Mike, is there anybody in this council that thinks that Mike has mismanaged funds or, you know, done bad things that he really deserves to be kicked off the council? I mean, hopefully you'll actually.
I'll tell you, the night that we came in here with, after everybody got a 13% increase in their taxes, people wanted answers, and each and every one of us councilors was sitting here with absolutely no knowledge of it. I was not impressed with the chair.
But do you think, as Rick actually stated there, I don't think any of us came in here with I don't think Mike sat weeks at home trying to figure out how he could piss the people off by raising their taxes. I mean, I think he's being a chairperson.
No,
But again,
the difference is, Fern, is that competent people do not do this type of thing.
do you think Mike could have done anything differently to avoid that, being a chairperson? Because Mike is the chairperson that actually carries out, that runs the meeting, but he isn't God that overruns the town.
We're getting more information through email right now than I've gotten in 2 years. I've got more in the last 2 weeks.
Communication's key, but I don't think communication is the thing that you actually stop banging on the chairperson that's been serving the town for 8 years.
Well, since we started banging on the chairperson and on the town manager, we are starting to get information.
I think we ought to communicate like this instead of doing what's going on in town, because there's just so many wild ideas going on in this town that really makes us councilors look really bad.
Well, when you're not 100% transparent, that's what happened.
Well, we're trying to be, and that's what we need to do is communicate more, but unfortunately, the things that are being portrayed out in the street have nothing to do with transparency. It adds the idea of people actually trying to make something out of what we're not discussing, okay? So if we can discuss an issue, like we are right now, hopefully to the point, I mean, whether it's the idea of Mike's ability, whether it's Steve's ability, we don't need to go into executive session. We're all big people. Let's talk about it so the people out there can understand what
agree.
we're talking about.
I agree.
I mean, I hate people leaving a meeting then actually, you know, you just hear some really interesting stuff. I mean, and I would like, for the goodness of Mike, to actually understand, you know, Mike, I mean, feels probably the same way Norma does when you're actually trying to serve a town and you have actually people trying to actually beat you up in the same town for serving them. It goes against everything that we're asking people to do. So, I mean, is there anybody on the council that has anything beyond the idea of communication issues, that has something that the town ought to know about that's factual?
All communication issues.
I mean, that's the biggest thing, and that's what the person asked. You know, you're sitting on the council and you don't tell the people about all this stuff, and I was like, tell people about what? You know, if the council doesn't believe that, I don't know how the information gets out in the town, so people can use information to go against them and try to use their energies to try to kick them out, when really they ought to be using their energies to try to help. You know, that's one of the things we have to work around.
And there's one thing, there's quite a few things for my personally that I can go back on that have been, I have issues with the chair.
But
What happened to me, Fern, from day one on this council could have been alleviated by the chair. That should have never taken place, and you know what I'm talking about. That should have never taken place. The chair should have controlled that, didn't.
I got to tell you, Roger, I've been in the
Issues-
same circumstance where people, including many people that you were part of, actually kind of stand up, and I sat here for 15, 20 minutes at a time being bashed the same way. Maybe not in the same situation, but even at the time, the chair didn't turn them off, and they were just beating on me. It's just this accusations of untruths. Whether it's truth or not, it didn't make a difference. One of the things that Lori mentioned today when I was on the phone, and she said, when I got on the council, I didn't want to be part of a council that was negative and not productive. She said the day one when I got on, she says, I want to ask everybody in the council if they have anything from the past that they have an issue with to bring forward. And if you don't, let's move forward in a positive way. And we all agreed that day that we needed to move forward in a positive way. And I don't think, hopefully from that point on, we didn't have a list of things to get rid of Mike. And hopefully if we put all that stuff behind us and trying to fix problems, those things shouldn't be resurfacing today. Was it right or wrong? I don't know. When people get up and say things about me, that's their right. That's why it's a public meeting. They can do what they want.
And
The
that
control of it,
I agree.
the control of it is unfortunately, one day we let off. I mean, Norma basically got thrown rocks at for trying to tell someone to stop during the presentation because it was going on too long. So again, it is a fine balance because the emotion runs the meeting a lot of times. Not right or wrong, but it does. So again, I mean, I feel as council, we either need to, say that we actually, as a council, supports Mike besides the communication part of it, or actually don't. I mean, to me, that's fair.
And there are other issues too. I mean, we can go on all night about this, but when a person wants to speak at that podium and are not allowed or are not given the respect to speak at that podium, I think it's a very, very, very ill thing to do.
Give me an example. I
Okay, I'll give you an example.
He's sitting right
Mr.
there.
Mr. Sampson was given the ability, given the privilege to speak at the microphone in one meeting. The following meeting, he wanted to speak, and Mike said no, and we had to override his opinion by a vote. To me, that is completely, totally goes against what this is all about.
But that's,
Because in all our meetings, definitely audience participation. That doesn't mean if someone's in there that is from a different town or that isn't having the same opinion about something that what you are, that you can just say, no, you can't speak. That means anybody that wants to speak have got the right to, and you sit here and you listen. Just like I did the night that Mr. Brooks did what he did, I sat here and I listened. Did I agree with him? No. But I had to listen to it for 2 hours. And this is the kind of things that over a period of the last 2 years have accumulated. And this is why we're at where we are right now. People don't like that. And we went through it with Norma. Norma got rocks thrown at her because of the way that she was dealing with people at the podium. She was sitting there rolling her eyes and doing things that people didn't like. And that's why they came at her the way that they did. When people come to a town meeting or a council meeting, this is the only place that they have to vent their concerns to the council is at these meetings.
and they have the right
And if you have any idea you're going to stop them, that is a wrong message that we should be sending to these people. I've heard Gina say this herself. How come nobody comes to our meetings? Would you want to go to a meeting if you got up to the podium, you was insulted or told that you can't speak? I wouldn't come to the meeting. I'd refuse to. And then we wonder why we have no participation in our whole town is because of this is the kind of government we've been running for the last 20 years.
But I don't think that every meeting reflects back to a very heated meeting like that one or the one before. I mean, in general, looking back over the course, and we elected him as a chair, and I would assume that he's doing the best he can as a chair. I wouldn't want to be sitting in his chair some nights. There's no question about it. There are circumstances where it's really hard to actually make the meeting very productive. And we, as councilors, would hope to take the respect that he has as chair to understand his decisions, or override them like we did. It's all fair. That's the government way. It's the way that things work. Mike was doing what he thought his best interest was to keep the meeting in order. Right or wrong, that's his chair's decision. We had an opportunity to maybe do something different. Then it would have been on us if something would have went awry. But again, that is part of the town politic way, the democratic way of actually. But again, that's not a reason to me to get a petition or actually to have him step down. It's a communication issue. But again, it's one of those things where I realize everybody has a right to get up to speak. If they're a taxpayer in town, they absolutely have a right.
Absolutely.
If they're a non-taxpayer right, then we can either grant them or not grant them permission. It's not a right of a non-taxpaying person to get up and speak. It is our opportunity to say whether they can or not. I assume that's what I've read. Maybe it's right.
Then if that was the case, Fern, then you should take audience participation off the thing. Because
Why? I just said that any taxpayer can speak
Yeah, but
anytime they want.
anybody that is in the audience should be
No.
able to speak.
No, that's a,
No.
that's
Any
that's a
resident, yeah.
resident audience participation.
Yeah.
Well, that should be written in there.
Applied that way?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I think everybody, I respect everything Jerry can say, and I have no problem with what Jerry says. That's why I voted to listen to him talk. I respect, but again, that is part of what a chair does. A chair
Conducts a meeting.
conducts a meeting. Whether we don't like it, we have opportunities, and luckily in the charter, we can actually override or actually go with or against. But again, that's not a reason to actually say the chair's doing a bad job. How many times have we overridden Mike in the last, since you've been on the council? How many times have we voted to override his decision at a meeting?
I can't tell you that, Fern, I can't remember.
That was the first time I ever seen it happen, and it was because we actually took upon ourselves to make the decision, which is fine. You mean, so, again, I mean, going back, for the people that call me and ask me, I just want to make sure that it's not coming from the council, there's no, shadow government up here that Mike's running the town that I know of, or misusing funds, or starting businesses, whatever the rumors are. As a chairperson, he's doing what he feels is best, and if we don't feel that way, we have the right as a council to work with that. Whether he gets voted in the chair or not, he's not going to be. I mean, he's all done come this next election,
There's another issue that brings up that I think we ought to clarify right now, too. Ms. Bradley set out a thing for economic development, and we have an ongoing investigation into some funds that were taken out of that office a few years ago. Am I correct? Is that still ongoing?
I'm pretty sure that I mentioned to this council that the district attorney's office said there was not enough evidence to prosecute.
Yeah, no, one of our last packets that was in there.
It was in there.
So they're gonna drop that 32.5 that the town will lost?
Yep.
Well, it's just, what I was gonna bring up is that we had an ongoing investigation, and then the economic developers puts in here that she purged all the files from the early 80s. To me, all those files would have been a little bit the input would have been good for these people investigating that.
I
Well,
believe
there is a point, and I'm not saying whether they should be purged or not, but there is a point with any records, after a while you get rid of them.
Well,
The business is required for tax returns to hang on to for 7 years. There is a point where you
Destroy them.
destroy them. That's just,
well,
I don't know what was destroyed.
I don't know what was
I don't
destroyed,
know
but
even what the years were. I'm just saying that
I don't
it's
think
not an
anything was
abnormal-
destroyed.
No.
I think it was just,
As an employee of her grade, she's taken it upon herself to do that. Or did she check the town manager first?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I just,
That's a question.
She never came to me, but staff doesn't use, they talked to the town clerk to get the guidelines that the state sets up to how long we should keep certain documentation. There is a guideline that the state has that we
Even with a-
follow. So we
Even with a-
destroy records on a regular basis that we don't need to keep.
I don't think they're destroying active records. I mean, if there's a TIF set in the 80s, I don't think that stuff
Yeah,
is.
there's a lot of stuff in our files.
Yeah.
In my office, there's files that we keep on TIFs. And from 1980, believe me, the computer systems that we have today were not the same as what we were using in the 80s. And the information could not have been on the computer. And I know from what we have for records here, in that office, there was very little documentation, and some of it was lost in the move, from what I was told, when we moved from the old building to here. So, and you moved in, what, 2001? This building was completed?
2000, I think.
2000? So records from the 80s, I'm not sure what they're referencing, but
I know that when Mr. Feeney was here, he had his office right down the hall. And I've been in that office, and he had his computer sitting there, and he showed me in his computer. I sat there, and we went over file after file, and all the stuff that he had going in this town, and all the projects, everywhere from the sausage kitchen to, all that stuff was started way back then with Mr. Bono, with Dan Feeney. And that was all listed, all in there.
well, I can just tell you, I worked with Jennifer Norris, and she went into Mr. Feeney's, all his files, and reorganized all of that stuff.
But they were there.
Because she reorganized it and put it so that you could find it, put it in order, filed it. She did all that. That's the first thing she did here for the first 3
I
months.
don't think you'll find
was
that stuff's
taking her
purged.
his office and his stuff, which wasn't very organized, I can tell you that.
No, it wasn't.
And she organized it.
One of the things I just want to add too is we, with the audit committee, one of the things I actually brought up for good reason is the idea of if the audit was current on all the TIFs and all the revolving funds and any economic development that we've been doing, and the auditor assured us that everything is in the proper place. There's no questions about missing funds or any financials that the audit's been doing for years. Up to this date, everything is exactly what it should be. There's no questions about any missing funds or any factors in that matter.
There's $32,500 missing.
Well, that was known being missing. Unfortunately, other people think differently of that than we do. And luckily, we've changed all the controls since that happened, and none of us were here to actually control how that happened. So, but all the controls in place have changed now, so that would not happen again.
I have a question.
He had the checkbook and had total authority of that checkbook. Today, he's got to go through certain amount of change commands before a check can be written, so that several eyes are on every single process. That was put in place
Question
after.
for Roger. Roger, are you saying that what Mike has done, and I'm not saying you've done anything, but you think it's grounds for dismissal? Is that what you're telling us?
I think we need change.
Okay,
That's not the question, though.
what, that's not the question. The question is, do you think it's grounds for dismissal?
Taken off the council? Or off the
Whatever
chair?
capacity you think.
Are you saying taken off the chair or taken off the council, Gina?
Either one, whichever one you think
I
should
think
have.
that the lack of communication absolutely deserves to lose his chair position. Does he deserve to be thrown off the council? Probably not. But when you refuse to give information out, that is serious. Because these people voted every one of us on this council, and to hold information from one or from two or three or all is very serious to these people. And these are the people that we represent. I don't sit here for Mike's benefit. I sit here for these people's benefit. And these are the people that put me here and want me to ask these questions and want me to know this information so that I can make a decision on it.
Okay, the other part of that is, what would be grounds for dismissal? Like talking about something that was said in executive session to you, would that be grounds for dismissal?
It depends what the topic is, because I've been in a lot of executive sessions that I think didn't belong in executive session. They should have been dealt in front of the public.
That's your opinion? Are you a lawyer?
I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that when we're talking about things like that old school, I think that should have been discussed with the people in entirety to know what they were going to do with it. And that was all done in executive session, and I don't think that was the correct thing to do. Now,
think
if I leaked it out, or if anybody leaked it out, do I feel they should be dismissed on it? No, because I think it should have been out in the public anyway. Now, if it was something about an employee or a contract, absolutely. That should not be out in the
So
public.
you think that if something was discussed in executive session about a contract and what somebody agreed upon, or that would be grounds for dismissal?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
It
Well,
could be.
We'll try to get some information out next meeting concerning something that was done. Also, I know at one time you and several folks in the audience had a problem. We were trying to get a couple of people that grew up in this town who do not live in this town but have businesses in this town to serve on ad hoc committees. I hope I have the proper name. And you had a problem with that.
Yes, I
because
did.
you felt that they were going to, I don't know what you thought they were going to do, but you don't have a problem with a non-resident stating an opinion or giving information.
A tax paying is one thing. Like Mr. Janosko came to the microphone. He is a taxpayer in this community. He's been in this community all of his life. I don't put him in the same position as I do with somebody that lives in another town and comes in and gives an opinion. But when the people of the audience are asking for that person's opinion, then you're coming underneath a whole different set of rules. I think a person that's coming from a different community, like Mr. Sampson, and the audience wanted to hear what he had to say, he should be given the opportunity to speak in the general public in that type of setting. But when a person comes to town, like Mr. Janosko, that has been here all his life, and he wants to speak at the podium, I feel he earns the right to speak at a public meeting.
Well, he happened to be one of the people that we wanted to sit on one of the committees.
Yep.
So do you feel the same way about him sitting on a committee?
I don't think they should be on committees, no. Because that committee is going to make decisions that people of the community should be making the decision.
I would beg to differ with you because
Well,
both of the
and
people,
that's-
excuse me,
we've
this is
always-
my opinion, okay? You've had your opinion, I'm having mine right now.
Absolutely.
The people that were going to sit on the committees, in my opinion, have been involved in this community probably more than any of us that have been sitting on this council for years and years and years, upward to 30 or more years. Their families have had businesses in this town for more than that, probably. And to say that they don't have a voting right or they don't have a right to be on a committee is one thing, but then somebody else can speak and say whatever they want is another thing. So I think forming your own opinion is fine, Roger, but I have mine also.
Absolutely.
And that's just I don't know, I feel you're talking about several different things at the same time, but.
There's been a lot of stuff that's gone on in the last 2 years, Gina. You know as well as I do, and prior to, that have not been above board on either side. And this is the kind of thing that could have been cleared up if we would have had the public being able to hear everything.
The public cannot hear everything, Roger, because of, and you know as well as I
All
do.
contracts and stuff like that.
Contracts and things that even could affect a real estate deal. Oftentimes, it's important that the council view it first and get to the point with that deal that we can share it with the public. It's just what it is, Roger. It's safe politics. You can call it anything. Governing, I guess, is the word I should use. It's safe governing, and it protects the people that are involved in the process. I know that if I was involved in that, I would hope that the people that sat in the executive session would consider my privacy also.
I personally feel that if a person wants to have a business or do something for the community, I would want the public to know. I would encourage the public to know. I'm gonna spend money in your community, I'm gonna do this for your community to help you out, and we're gonna take a building and fix it up that would normally be torn down. This is the kind of thing I think the community would wanna know.
And in time, I believe they do, if it actually moves to that step. If it gets to the step that
Why
actually,
you can't right from the get-go.
because they may not do it. They may
And if
not
they
have
don't,
the
they don't.
opportunity to.
Roger, the reason they can't is because we have an attorney, that's a municipality attorney that looks at case studies and lawsuits and says, don't do it. So you might want to do it, but us want to protect the taxpayer from getting their butt sued. So if you want to do it and you want to talk about executive session after we leave there, go ahead.
I didn't
But
talk
we
about
don't.
executive session.
Yeah, yes, you have.
No,
So-
I haven't.
Well, whatever. I don't want to get down.
Keep facts
forget
anyways,
the past.
please.
I don't
Yeah,
care about that.
facts.
And the other thing is, last week, when I was gone, 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion afterwards, and you did want to take a vote by the
Yes, we
council.
did.
Wait a minute, you just said you just said you didn't think he should be voted to, wait a minute, let me finish. My turn.
I'm listening.
You wanted to vote, you wanted the council to vote to remove him.
Yes, I
And
did.
you just said a minute ago we shouldn't have, so I don't understand.
Well,
2 weeks ago, you wanted us to take a vote, and then tonight, you don't think we should have. So which is it?
2 weeks ago, when we came in here to this meeting, we was getting phone calls, and you know you got a pile of them yourself.
I know, but what
And it
changed
was
your
a
mind
very
from 2
hot
weeks
issue
ago?
at that time that wanted us to do something and do something
I
now.
know all that. I'm just confused because
And I
you
heard
told
it
me
from
one
Ms.
thing-
Pumelo, I've talked to Gina at that time, and we were all very looking at doing something to remove people.
What the conversation was, you told me that you talked to all the councilors, and that the majority of the councilors wanted to remove him from chair.
Yes.
Then it went from removing from chair to remove him from the council.
What he had done, I felt, deserved it at the time, because we were
But you
all
changed your
very
mind.
upset.
But you changed your mind from
Well,
2
the
weeks.
thing of it
I'm
is
just trying to figure it out. Which is it? Did you change your mind or not? I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to get the story
The
straight.
whole thing was, when it first hit the airways, that we had another year of messed up taxes.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking, did you change your mind, or which was it?
No, I personally, I don't think Mike should have been allowed to continue on the council for what he done.
Okay.
I
that's all-
personally.
That's all I was asking.
And when I talked, you was pretty upset yourself, Dale. We were all upset after that.
Who wasn't? The whole town was up in uproar.
You're darn right he were.
I agree. No, I agree with that. That's
And
not
we
bad- that's not
we
bad.
all thought at that time there should be some heads disappearing. And at the time, if we would have voted on it, I believe Mike would not be here. But because of one thing or another, we're at where we are
I made it
today.
very clear to you that it's up to the voters to vote him in
Or vote
and to
them out.
vote them out.
Exactly.
And I would have nothing to do with any one of
Exactly.
you voting you off this council because you was voted in by the people, and 7 people shouldn't decide, or 6 people, the destiny of somebody that's been voted in by the public.
But you did agree that he should be removed as
I agreed that if we all agreed, this is
Right.
what I agreed, if we all agreed that he ought to step down until the election, the majority of the council, then I would go along with it.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And then you said, correct me if I'm wrong, that if the people don't want him in there, they should remove him.
I said there's a process by the charter to remove any one of us.
And if the
in
people
process.
don't, they're the ones that have to initiate it.
Exactly,
Okay.
because I'm for
And
what the
if-
people want to do.
And Fern is coming at me tonight saying
I'm
that,
not coming at, I'm just trying to find out, because
well, if
if
that process is being done at
if the
this
people
time,
have the proper information, that my only
have the
concern was
right.
not that it actually is happening, that the people are getting the proper information. And unfortunately, what I was told, and that's going back to my beginning, is the people out there hearing stuff that evidently council's not talking. Everybody talks a little bit, but not talks in public. Why that should be done. And I've heard some crazy, wild rumors of why people think Mike needs to leave, and probably none of them had to do with what we're talking about right here.
Right.
I mean, factual or not, I mean, a lot of I heard secondhand, which doesn't mean, secondhand information doesn't mean anything to me, but I feel that if I'm getting called, everybody else is being called, and if someone is serving the town and is has false statements being put out against him, why he needs to be removed, if a tax person in town is saying, hey, look, do you want to remove Mike Bowie because he didn't actually communicate with the people the way he should have, the council list. I mean, that's fine if they understand that scenario, but the only way they can understand that is us talking. Besides that, they're only getting 1 or 2 opinions. But if persons are out there collecting signatures because of a list of things that Mike has done wrong that aren't factual or backed up, that to me is a concern, because none of us should be put in that circumstance.
let me ask you this one question. The evening that we was here was on a Friday evening, I believe, or it was Tuesday, Friday evening.
First meeting, yeah.
The first meeting.
The emergency meeting.
If you'd have
yeah.
took a show of hands when Mike wouldn't let Mr. Sampson speak, do you think he would still be here?
It wasn't the first meeting they did, it was actually the second meeting, yeah.
Do you think Mike would still be here,
But
honestly?
people are voting by what? Emotions, not facts. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, if we voted by emotions, we'd still be hanging people outside by the trees, and we probably all would have been hung that night, okay?
So
But unfortunately, we can't rule on emotion. We're gonna
Okay.
rule on facts.
Let me just say this then. When Dale and I had these conversations that he's
Yeah.
talking about, were the emotions a little high, Dale?
We were all upset, yeah.
They were
when you're
very
upset,
high.
that emotions, yeah.
And there was a lot of things that was said, and probably, at that time,
Between you two, you can talk all you want. That's
but
to
we
me is
were
no
very
concern.
upset about what had just happened. Gina was upset, Lori was upset.
All of
They
us.
both
We
sat
all
here and
were.
said that they
He
were,
was upset. Mike was
I
upset.
can't remember, oh, she was ashamed to sit up here,
Embarrassed was the word.
embarrassed, to sit there. Well, at that time, there was a lot of animosity about this because we had not been given the information.
Mike, at that point in time, had the opportunity to, he probably would have. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, going back, I mean, it'd just be nice to base any principle that we have against Mike as on factual information. Emotions and feelings of how we feel after the meeting really don't mean a lot. There's meetings that I leave that I'm really discouraged, and it has nothing to do with any of your chair people. It's about just the direction we're heading sometimes, or financially, how we're gonna make it out. I mean, emotionally, I mean, you can't be a counselor on emotions. You got to be a counselor on facts. You mean, and so I mean that was my main concern, because the message I got from the people that call me is, as a counselor not talking, when we come here and we actually say nice football game this weekend, even though they are doing great, you know what I mean? But again,
Big game
that's
this weekend.
that's not counselor communication. Counselor communication is when we actually talk, and if we have a disagreement, weigh it out and let the people get the information from us, not from people outside of here guessing what we're assuming that could have happened.
But
I
have
mean,
we done this in the past, Fern?
I think
this stuff, I don't think we've really communicated much.
We
unfortunately.
haven't done this once in the last 2 years.
I
that
think we
know
need to
of.
do it a lot.
I
I
think
mean,
we-
that's what council communications is supposed to be about.
I think we beat this horse long enough. Let's move on.
Ready to go home?
Agree.
Again, that was
Any
my
other-
concern.
I have one last item, somewhat on maybe a more positive note, but I had the great privilege today of speaking with the Lisbon Community School Student Council, about a 20-member council, great energetic group. We talked about leadership, volunteering and everything. They're going to be running a bunch of different things for the school, and they're looking to help the town out. Some of their ideas that they had come up with is they want to help wrap presents for the Giving Tree. They want to help give them out. They want to help out on Project Thanksgiving. They're looking to collect some food for donations towards that, and maybe some to Laco.
That's great.
So I think the assistant principal there, Ryan Petrie, I think is the way to pronounce his name, got a great group of kids, and it was just a great enjoyment and pleasure to speak to them today. I thought they're going to be a great group of kids coming up and doing a lot of good things. So that's all I had. Dale.
One last thing, yeah, just to remind everybody, Saturday, Lisbon's playing Winthrop. They're both 6-1. It's the last game of the season. Hope you can make it. It's going to be awesome.
It's home?
Home.
Home game. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, next item.
Mr. Chair,
To adjourn.
this gentleman would like to just say something. Could he please get this in?
It's council communication. He had audience
I know, I
participation.
understand
I
that, but
want to say something about the chair. I want to clarify something for Fern. I'm one of the people that don't like Mike sitting as a chair. You want facts, I'll give them to you. The first meeting we were here, we had people in there, down that hall, as far as you can see. I made a recommendation that when we have these items that are really questionable, that are going to generate a lot of discussion, that we might want to put this in a facility that held everybody in. As the weeks go on, the next meeting, we had them back there and we had them out here. Now you look, we don't have crap here. Gina says, we need more people participating in what goes on. Well, you can't do that very well when they have to stand up for 3.5 hours. They can't hear what you guys are saying. So why would anybody want to come out here and stand for 3.5 hours, not hear what's going on? Okay? That's the first thing.
Of all fairness, though, do you think Mike knew how many people were going to attend that first meeting? I mean,
No,
it's-
but the
it's-
second meeting, I know he didn't know how many people were going to be here, and I wasn't saying the first meeting. I said the second meeting. We were still there, we were still down there, and we had them piled up, and we still couldn't hear you. Okay? I'm saying if you want participation from the people of this town, especially on issues that are going to be questionable, and I don't think there was anybody on that council can tell me they didn't realize that you were going to run into a buzzsaw that night, okay? That we need to be more minded towards the public and get a place for them to air out their opinions. The next thing was, you guys had a meeting here, and this was a total lack of communications, because you people went into an executive session or went in the back rooms. Mike said, and I'm not going to say it word for word because I don't remember it. I'm an old man. But I do remember him saying, we will discuss the tax issue after we have the workshop. So there was 20 or 30 of us sat here, waited for them to come out of executive session, which was about an hour and a half, I don't know. And when they finished the workshop, you guys grabbed your coats and went home. Now, we didn't have an opportunity to say anything. We were set here because we were told that after the workshop, we would discuss this. We didn't know it was going to be 6 weeks later, or we wouldn't have sat here for an hour and a half. These are facts. We asked questions for 3 weeks. Nobody, not one question was answered the entire time. Now, he's responsible for the chair. I'm not saying Mike needs to be thrown off the council, but I would have rather had somebody else in there who at least, one, would listen to us when we speak, two, answer our questions, if not at the meeting because they don't have the answers right on the top of your head, at the next meeting, so that we can keep abreast of what's going on and know that you guys are working for us. I think that's the chair's responsibility. And that's why me, for one, and I don't vote, Mike, and I'm not on the petition because I'm in Lisbon, I think you ought to go. That's my opinion, and those are the facts.
I mean, one of the things that is really tough, and again, last year we talked about me being chair, and I really had no interest in it because of a lot of scenarios that you can't control. The idea of, unfortunately, our average meeting participation throughout the year, if your average every meeting ends up being what? 5, maybe 6 on a good average, maybe. We have people that, I mean, it's very hard to know exactly what the format is that we can actually have for people. The idea of Mike answering, again, I'm not protecting Mike, but even if any of us were sitting as chair, there's none of us that would have been able to answer many more questions that Mike had, because as of today, I still can't answer questions because I don't think they've been answered for us. And again, I respect your opinion, and I know I sat here in quite a few school night meetings, multiple, where I sat out in the hall, and I mean, I probably lost a pound of sweat hanging out there trying to listen with inside, and I didn't yell at the school board for that. I was just really excited there was a lot of people here that actually was voicing their opinions. But again, was it the school board's fault? The school probably has a bigger facility to do a meeting in than we do, but, you know, this is kind of the norm, you know?
You know, one of the things that you're missing too, Fern, at one of our last meetings, Mike asked that we do the executive session first, so we would not have to pay for Roger Terrio to sit here. We went into executive session, come out, and Roger Terrio sat right there until 11 o'clock at night.
I think there was more than one attorney, though, that actually was participating in that didn't stay. But I don't know, but I'm just
But
saying that.
people have called me and said, why are we not having the executive session first if the attorney's gonna stay till 11 o'clock anyway? We could've gone home and you guys could've had your executive session. This is the issue that was brought to me.
Yep. I'm looking, definitely, can't dispute it, because he's here.
No.
Yep.
You know, and people don't, you know, why are you doing this when you said that? And this is the kind of thing
I don't
that
think Mike
upset
had control
people.
of him staying here, though. I don't think, you know what I mean? I don't know if that was Roger staying because he wanted to be or not, but again, I didn't know the facts, so. You looking for a motion to adjourn? No.
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
next?
Order
Next.
2010-180 to adjourn?
I'd make that motion.
I have a motion from Councilor Larochelle, second from Councilor Crafts. All those in favor?